Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Friday. We got through the week. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It has been quite a week in the global capital equity markets, and we are here once again, alive on planet Earth. All of us are here, with many of you spamming these freaking rainbow emojis because now that's a thing, but we're all here. We're live, and we got a lot to talk about. Outside of the rainbow emojis, I also see the ticker that you guys are spamming. So yes, I woke up this morning just like you guys and was like, OMG, it might be happening. Mr. SoFi, $19 in the pre-market. It hit $19.50 at one point. Sorry, $19.80. We are going to see when the market opens if this is sustainable to hold, but it's pretty freaking cool to finally see some of these stocks get some love. But it's not just SoFi. It's not just SoFi. Adobe up 2%. Salesforce up 3%. Reddit, which was up 7% yesterday. Palantir, finally 100% growth in guidance and 85% growth top line might be getting rewarded. That's almost at 150. You got ServiceNow. That's up 9%. ServiceNow almost 120. We will talk about Dell. Trust me, we will talk about Dell. Dell's up 35%. I know, hard to even believe that. But they put up the good growth. They put up the good growth that allowed the street to interpret how their growth would be not only surpassing expectations, but sustainable. And so, quite frankly, I think they definitely deserve to be up today. We'll see if the street allows it to be up 34%. But just unbelievable levels of growth in terms of the semiconductor names, which are continuing to hold on. But Dell's 35% move is not at the trade-off of a company like SoFi or Reddit or Shopify or Robinhood, which is completely diverging from Bitcoin. I don't know what the hell's happening with Hood. Not complaining about it, but the fact that it's finally getting out of that kind of Bitcoin stench, which I just hope that continues to last. You know, we've been through a couple of these days before, a couple of these weeks where it's made a move and then eventually comes back to Bitcoin. But now maybe the street's just interpreting the agent stuff and the Trump accounts is like different than Bitcoin. And that's enough because theoretically, Robin should be trading at like $70 if we peg it to Bitcoin. The fact that it's at 85 is incredible. That's up 0.5% in the pre-market. AppLovin's up a little bit in the pre-market. You got Zeta making a move. Maybe we got 21 on the deck today, 2067 right here in the pre-market. I mean, I think you are finally seeing a return of the companies that have been left for dead. Look at ServiceNow, 120, 80 to 120 in the past 3 weeks. I mean, I know it's not Micron going from 200 to 900 in a couple of months, but the point is, you know, for the risk you were taking on buying a fundamental company that was at depressed valuations, it's really, really, really nice to see some of this stuff get rewarded. So it's pretty cool. We got a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. We're going to get into all of the different moving parts. The cool thing is you're not seeing semis go down the drain in order for a lot of these stocks to get their green. I mean, SMH, the semiconductor ETF, that's up 1% in the pre-market. But you're also not seeing software get destroyed or fintech get destroyed in order for Dell to go up 40%. Even though Dell had massive earnings. And so I think you're seeing net new capital come in. I think you're seeing short covering coming in. And I think you're seeing a broader, not rotation, but broadening aspect of the market. Maybe a little bit of rotation here and there, but you're seeing some more broadening, which I think is very healthy. I think we've all been waiting for it. And the fact that it's happening right now is fun to see. So, you know, it's been a bull market in certain sectors, and it's kind of sucked for a lot of people that were heavily overweight in other sectors that were not massively inside of the biggest semi names. But those companies were not horrible companies. They're fundamentally sound companies. They just weren't loved. And if sentiment changes, the earnings growth is there to hopefully guide that sentiment changing in the right direction. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in the pre-market. So let's get into it. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you all for being here. We got a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. Let's get started. All right. So first off, let's start with the space situation, because I see a lot of people talking about this. Rocket Lab and ASTS is down. Rocket Lab down about 4.2%. ASTS is down about 11%. There is a reason for it, and the reason is Blue Origin's explosion at Launch Complex 36. This video is a little graphic, but it is pretty aggressive. And I think this took down the entire space sentiment last night. Again, those stocks have had massive runs, but you know, when you have something like this blow up, that is the risk when you're kind of in some of these space names. So this was the launch they tried to do, as you can see right there on the screen, and it didn't go so well. It did not go so well. That's crazy, dude. I saw that last night. And that was crazy. I was with Steve last night after the podcast, and we both saw it together, and it was just absolutely crazy. There's another angle here that's even crazier. So take a look at this one. So that, along with a Bloomberg headline that SpaceX's valuation is likely going to be lowered, which I don't really know how real that headline is, because you have some reports saying they were targeting 2 trillion, and now Bloomberg saying they're going to do 1.8, which is, getting people to think, hey, is there actually that much demand for the SpaceX IPO? You had other people saying they were going for 1.5, they're going for 1.8, which is actually more than the allotted valuation. So I don't think anyone knows at this point. A lot of it's just hearsay through different rumors. And we will eventually find out when SpaceX officially goes public on June 12th. I'll be live probably the whole day covering that IPO. But when that does happen, we'll get a better understanding of the valuation. Nonetheless, ASTS is up like 100% in the past month. Rocket Lab is up 110% in the past 3 weeks. For them to be down 3 to 4%, ASTS down about 10% pre-market, it's not that big of a deal. So not that crazy, but yeah, those stocks are red. And that's kind of why your space sentiment, at least for today, is down. Mr. Derek Wall, thank you for the gifted 20 memberships. Nick, you got a membership. Andy, you got a membership. Andrew, Don, Peter, Sty, Dario, Uzi, Redline, Ethan, Eric, Next, Nikki, you all got memberships courtesy of Mr. Derek Wall. Derek is such a nice person. I was on the phone with Derek this morning. I know a lot of you guys have been asking about him, and he's been busy. He's been busy. So hopefully he'll come onto the show one day and talk about what he's been up to. But super awesome friend of the channel. He is the single reason I got invested into Figure at a $2 billion valuation and I'm trying to get a $250 million valuation. So we were kind of talking about it today in the morning, just, the journey over the past couple of years. And it's been pretty amazing. And he's been an angel, I guess you could say, in my life, in terms of a blessing to open me up to all these opportunities. So deeply, deeply appreciate him watching my show in the morning with all you guys. And thank you, Mr. Derek Wall, for being here. ServiceNow right there up 9.5%. Dell up 34%. SMH is up 1%. Let's talk about Dell. So that was the space stuff. Let's talk about Dell. Dell, this quarter was, I think I'll just let this clip play, because in this market environment, what else do you have to say other than this clip? He told us to buy it. He told us to freaking buy it.
And I want to thank the Dell family. It's a great family. He is amazing. She is amazing. They've done such a job on that. They put up a lot of money too. Put up $6.25 billion. That's somebody. And he started making computers on his bed in college and selling them because they were better than other computers. And I said, how did you do that? He said, well, I did it and I just never stopped. It just kept going. So go out and buy a Dell. They're great.
I mean, dude, at this point, like, you can scream immoral, unethical, presidents trading, yada. The reason I don't think any of those concerns practically matter, they theoretically matter in your mind when you're thinking about like the unjust nature of this administration. They don't practically matter because in January 2025, when Trump launched the meme coin and it fell 3 days later, 85%, that is when all things were off the table. And it became very obvious to me that, yeah, it makes sense that this administration is going to do whatever the hell it wants, and you can either complain about it or make money. And even with knowing that, I did not buy Dell because I personally could not stomach buying that thing at $280 when he said to buy it after it already 2x in less than a month. Now, if you did, you got rewarded because now it's $430. But the point is, this administration has basically shown you they don't care. Trump has invested heavily in crypto. His brothers are invested heavily in the drone companies. I mean, they are making a killing off this market. And you either complain about it or you kind of participate if you have the stomach to be able to participate. And those that are participating are really starting to get rewarded. But it wasn't all Donnie T. He gave us a little bit of the warning, but it wasn't Trump himself. The numbers they put up are just unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. Quite frankly, Jensen doing the interview with Michael Dell a couple weeks ago was actually more of a tell than what Trump said, because it was kind of obvious when you look at it in hindsight, as it's always obvious in hindsight, that the server rack demand was going to be growing exponentially. Beat revenues by $8 billion. The street got the estimate wrong by $8 billion. Like, that doesn't happen. Wall Street is supposed to compose of the most smartest individuals that are able to understand all the dynamics of a company. How do they underestimate by $8 billion? Like, that is why the stock is moving so crazily, because expectations were not just beat and raised, they were destroyed. And that fundamentally re-rates the company. They raised their fiscal year guide from $50 billion to $60 billion. And so now you got that going at $10 billion, which is, just absolutely incredible. They beat EPS by 68%, and then they raised fiscal year EPS guide by 25%. Chad said, you said most smartest. Yes, Chad, I did say most smartest, which is why I am not the most smartest. But the point is, Dell is the most winningest of today because they beat the expectations at a level that I think most people didn't expect. Dell also had a partnership with Palantir a couple of weeks ago that we talked about as well, which was very important. And I think because you're seeing all these different partnerships in a variety of different applications in the context of Palantir, was for on-prem AI operating systems, and you have Jensen endorsing them to the level they are. I mean, the fact that SMCI is up 10% in the pre-market and HP is up because server demand was so underestimated, almost as if, it's having a memory re-rating. Now, it doesn't have the types of gross margin power that memory has because, memory is just such in tight supply versus server racks. But the point is, there is so much more demand than what we thought, which is why you're getting Dell to get this much excitement and momentum. So if you've got Dell, congrats. I don't even know if it's a sell going into the market open at this point. And the reason I don't think it's a sell is because I read through a bunch of sell side upgrades this morning. They all raised it. Someone raised it to 750. JP Morgan raised it to 500. Take a look at what JP Morgan said right here in terms of the sustainability of growth. We do not assume that Dell's updated outlook for approximately 50% year-over-year revenue growth is sustainable. However, the upgrades and refreshes of devices and infrastructure, along with additional capacity requirements directly or indirectly tied to AI, are driving visibility into a higher sustainable run rate of growth over the medium term relative to the last issued guide for mid-teens growth over a longer-term horizon. So they're saying, look, we're upgrading the stock not because we think they're going to keep growing 50% like NVIDIA, but we do think that the level of growth they are experiencing and the level of demand that we have for server racks, simply because there's so many more GPUs that are being shipped, which eventually all goes back to NVIDIA, which is, ironic because NVIDIA is not going up. But the point is, this all comes back to the amount of demand that is still out there for the AI ecosystem. That is why Dell has more sustainable growth. And as a result of that, you're seeing that momentum in the pre-market, and that continues to go great. So a lot of price target raises this morning. I do not think this is retail euphoria. You got all the big guys coming out. I mean, there were price target raises on Dell from $150 to $600 today. Talk about the sell side completely not understanding or missing the story. And because they're telling their clients, hey, you got to buy this thing, it's going up higher, I think we might see some more buying. Now, could I see some selling today? Yeah, because stock's up 50% in a couple of days. So I definitely think there will be some people taking profits, but still pretty incredible to see that much demand and that much momentum as well. So that is what you got for Dell. Bitcoin, unfortunately, not moving. Trump has said to buy Intel. It worked out. He said to buy Dell. It worked out. He said to buy Palantir at 123. It's at almost 150. Hopefully that continues to go even higher. He has said to buy Bitcoin. And I imagine, although Bitcoin's being a laggard here, I don't think we get a full bull market without Bitcoin participating. So eventually I think this thing will come back. Maybe it needs rate cuts to really happen. But when it does come back, it will come back with a vengeance. And that will be a catalyst for Robinhood, Coinbase, SoFi with SoFi USD, Circle, MicroStrategy, etc. It's just right now, it's not loved. But what is the lesson from the stocks that we're experiencing right now, at least today in the pre-market, for the names that weren't loved? I mean, sometimes you buy them. Sometimes you buy them and they end up working out. Reddit at 140, Palantir at 130, ServiceNow at 80, Oracle, which is now a software company. Some days it's data center company, some days it's software company. This thing got to 130, 150. I mean, the names that aren't loved, that are putting up fundamental numbers, yeah, sometimes they're going to stay stuck, but other times, and Rocklab's the best example, right? Stuck at 70 for a couple months and then boom, breaks out. If it's a good company, eventually the market will find the capital to allocate to it. You just have to be patient. And I think today we're finally seeing some of that patience being rewarded. Now, look, SoFi's still down a lot year to date. Robinhood's still down a lot year to date. Palantir's still down year to date. ServiceNow still down year to date. But if you DCA'd and you bought them at the lows, then they're not down as much, which is very exciting to see. Yeah, Shopify right there at 116 as that continues to go green. Again, for those that are wondering why is space up or space down, it was that ASTS launch, or not the ASTS, the Blue Origin launch that ended up not working out. Blue Origin said there was an anomaly. Elon was really nice about it. He said, I'm happy no one got hurt. Hopefully everything goes well. So, a lot of people just wanted to make sure everything was safe, but obviously it was a pretty aggressive explosion. And that's why those stocks are down right here. Okay, let's talk about SoFi. Why is SoFi up? So I don't know. I have a couple of theories on why SoFi is up, and we'll kind of talk about what those theories are. This is especially nice to see for two reasons. Number one, obviously we just interviewed Noto on the pod, and I think he was pretty influential on the pod in explaining why he thinks the stock is stuck and why he thinks the stock will eventually be re-rated. So it was nice to see that. I did not personally buy more SoFi after the podcast for myself because I already bought it around 25, 24 bucks back in January. Obviously, I've been bag holding all year. Has been fun to bag hold. Been allocating to different positions like a Shopify, a Reddit, a Zeta, etc. However, did buy some SoFi for someone else, and that someone else is pretty happy this morning. Bought my mom SoFi after the interview for two reasons. About 13,500 shares. So she's a little happy this morning. Just a little, little payback for like bringing me into the world. It's like, okay, well, let's let's buy you a stock that hopefully goes up. The reason I bought it for her and Jose is honestly the real reason this pumped. I mean, to be honest, Jose is the actual reason that this pumped. Now we need Jose to literally buy every single stock that we're stuck in. The reason I bought it for her is very simple. Number one, she was looking for a position where she could run covered calls on effectively and get some income for every week. So these shares are covered at 18. So we're going to have to roll them. Stock's at 19. I am very happy rolling this from like 18 to 20 and waiting a couple months because at the end of the day, it's a lot of gains on a $15.74 average on that position. Number two is a lot of the positions she was already in were stuck because we rolled them out so far that they weren't doing anything. They weren't collecting her premium or income and they weren't even growing. So ended up selling just a lot of stuff that was stuck, not moving, and said, you know what? Noto believes in it. Stock is stuck. I didn't expect it to go to 19 or 18 anytime soon. And if it goes back to 17, I wouldn't even care because I'm just happy that it's not stuck in the low 15s anymore. But when Noto made the point that he thinks we probably shouldn't lose the 2x tangible book multiple that we have right now, that was my trigger to be like, okay, it's probably safer than not. Maybe it's not going to the moon tomorrow. And knowing SoFi, it'll dump as soon as the market opens because SoFi has done that many times. And if it happens, it happens. But this thing probably shouldn't go back below 15. Especially if sentiment is changing. So for those that bought the dip on it, congrats. For those that bought leaps on it, congrats. At the end of the day, I think that Noto interview was pretty influential. And I don't think that's what's moving the stock. Let me be clear about that. I think that got a lot of people like myself to be excited about the name probably trading at a valuation that is bottomed. And so you did have some people that ended up buying the stock for themselves or their family or whatever, buying leaps. And maybe that created some momentum. The reason I think it's up is because oil is coming down. And what did Noto say in that podcast? He said something very simple. He said, if inflation expectations come down, oil is at a new low in the past 2 weeks, 87. Then if oil comes down, inflation expectations should come down, which means rate cut probability should go up. And he was pretty explicit. If rate cuts are back on the table, SoFi is not going to be trading at 2 times tangible book. On top of that, you have SoFi USD that is launching soon. And SoFi USD, I think, is going to be, based on how Noto described it, I don't know if it's a massive game changer, but it is a new line of business that could be bringing in $1 billion of revenue over the next couple of years for SoFi. Eventually, that should be priced in. And as a result of that, hopefully it bottomed at 15. Knowing SoFi, it could get back there because it has definitely played with our hearts before in terms of these massive moves that get faded. But if it's not going below 15, I think that'll be okay. And, maybe that'll create a floor to the stock. So that's my thesis on SoFi. SoFi USD was launched today. That is correct. And so you're going to get a lot more people that are excited about that. Now, the question is going to be at its core, does this lead to an increase of revenue anytime soon? And more importantly, does this lead to a sentiment shift on SoFi being perceived as just a bank? Because then, by the way, Noto was only using multiple on tangible book because he knows the bears use that as the valuation. Theoretically, I don't think he wants to be valued on tangible book. He wants to be valued on earnings because they're a company that's growing earnings, even if they're a company that primarily offers credit loans and credit origination. So from that perspective, I think if you value it outside of it being a bank, there's probably a higher multiple, but time will tell to see how the street ultimately interprets it going into the long term. So there you go. That's my thoughts on SoFi. I also think it's the same thing with Hood, right? There's a fintech re-rating that's going on, potentially Affirm, Coinbase. All these names are up right now because maybe the market is coming back to their senses and thinking that fintech is not dead. And as a result, that could be a broader reason for why that stock is going a bit higher. So we'll see. We'll see. I am a little skeptical of a lot of these moves and if they are sustainable to be held, especially on a Friday. But even if they go down 3 or 4% from here, they are up a lot from the absolute lows of last month. I don't think Palantir is going back to 130. Maybe it goes back to 145. But if it doesn't go back to 130, then boom, you're up $15 from the dip. And hopefully that can also start to change sentiment. Same thing with ServiceNow. Is this thing going back to 80? I mean, maybe it goes from 120 to 110 again, but it's not going back to 80 in my opinion. Like there's a re-rating that's happening. Dell probably not going back to 250 anytime soon. And so we've seen all these semiconductor names get re-rated. We haven't seen the names that have been destroyed get re-rated. And if those are getting re-rated, then obviously I think there's going to be a lot more excitement. Iran, what's going on with Iran? Well, we talked about it yesterday. There is not a deal with Iran yet, but Axios reported a deal is very likely. This is the other reason the S&P 500 broke to all-time highs yesterday. There is a 60-day ceasefire that potentially might go into place. Iran would be required to remove all mines from the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. would lift the naval blockades, and Trump is currently reviewing the agreement before giving final approval. This headline right here is what really pumped the markets yesterday. We don't have the official, hey, for sure, like it's happening. Once that does happen, and I think the market's starting to try to price it in because once again, oil is coming down. It was at 95 on Monday. It was at 90 yesterday, 87 today. If this thing gets below 80, we're not going to be worried about CPI, PPI, and PCE. They will still be elevated probably for the next couple months until maybe October, November. But the market's going to price out that these things are definitely coming down. And that would also get the market to be pretty excited. What does re-rated mean? Re-rated is just kind of a term of art used when we talk about the stock market, that when a stock or a company fundamentally shows a difference in their potential for earnings. So for example, when Palantir became GAAP profitable back in May of 2023, the stock was trading at $7 at the time. They went to 15 in a couple of weeks. And so they were re-rated. Wall Street thought of them as a big boy company that after 20 years has now been able to prove a profit. And if they could keep expanding that profitability, the re-rating would continue. And I think on a SoFi, if you introduce something like SoFi USD, and let's say this thing absolutely scales and goes crazy and becomes this monster product, that's a re-rating of how we think about the multiple on growth. Micron, obviously re-rated. It was trading at 3 times forward earnings back in April, and now it's trading at 10 times, which one could argue is still undervalued because of the demand and the supply-demand imbalance and pricing power that Micron has when it comes to memory. So a lot of the fintech and software names have not been re-rated. They've been re-rated to the downside, I guess you could say, and maybe they're coming back to the upside, which would be very exciting as well. Carnival Cruise would also rally, as Chris says in the chat, if oil really gets below 80. The airlines, I think the airlines are still a decent bet right here. If oil collapses, I mean, that final stretch to get below 80 might not be as easy as we think. But if it does happen, you know, American Airlines, United, Carnival Cruise, anything that is highly contingent on oil, probably you got another 10, 15% that's in there. Now, some of the names have already pumped for a variety of different reasons, different partnerships like American Airlines had with Starlink, but there might be some juice left to squeeze out of these lemons if, you know, these re-ratings continue to happen. CrowdStrike right there, that's up 1.5%. Zscaler, that's up 1.5% as well. Matt says, oil, is Chris cooking? Chris is cooking with this ServiceNow position. That is fair. Just like Matt is cooking with his Rocket position, which means we all are finally getting to win a little bit. It is just so nice for all of us to win. It's so nice. If you're in Micron, you're winning. If you're in Rocket Lab, you're winning. If you're in ServiceNow, you're winning. It is just so nice for all of us to win together. You know, you know what? You know who's to blame for this? Leopold. Ever since he bought Nebius, I think he resolved the war between Iran and Nebius, and the forces of the market were like, you know what? Now that he's on both sides of the train, everyone can win. And a day later, software and fintech goes to the moon. It's just so nice. Yeah, BM&R doesn't get win and Grab doesn't win either, but their days eventually will come, hopefully. But outside of those, you know you're getting to it. Zscaler's also not winning that much either. That was a pretty nasty print. But the point is, a lot of other sectors that you're in. Yeah, PayPal's not winning. Okay, so there are still some names that are not winning. But if you're not all in, which no one should be all in on any one name, unless it's Micron or Rocket Lab. But if you're not literally all in on one name, you know, you're not doing too bad. And if you are all in on SoFi because you don't give a shit that Micron's going to the moon and you believe in Nodo and you believe in the company, yada, yada, today is your day, you know? So it sucks to be all in when you're all in on a loser, but when that loser becomes a winner, which requires the one thing that is a virtue, patience, these days, you know, really tend to feel better. But if you're a bit more diversified into other names, if you have software, fintech, semis, et cetera, you know, you're starting to see a lot more broadening of that bull market, which is very nice to see. Speaking of the bull market, you've got some bears that just don't believe this market can sustain itself. Bank of America. Here is their top macro analyst explanation. I'm very curious what you guys have to say of her thoughts on why this market is unsustainable.
You are saying that you're leaving your target unchanged at 7,100 at this point. We have watched the markets take off.
We have.
What do you say to clients at this point? What are you advising?
Look, I like stocks. I just don't like the index. And I think the index right now is particularly risky from the perspective that if you think about what is the most crowded equity ticker in the world, it's the S&P 500. If we're in an environment where investors need to raise capital, that is probably first to be sold. So I think just at an index crowding level, that gives me pause. On top of that, we've got a lot of new issuance coming up, particularly in the technology sector. You know, there's trillions of dollars of private capital that's slated to come public over the next few years, which is great, but it potentially squeezes out and creates more competition.
You are saying that you're leaving your target.
So that's her argument. Her argument is like stock picking has done well, but the S&P 500 itself has too many stocks that have gone up. So if people want to raise liquidity, they're going to sell the S&P, which I don't think is a crazy argument. Like, yeah, if you need to raise liquidity and you want to sell something that's winning, you'll probably sell some of your S&P. Although I do think you would sell like some individual stocks before you sell the S&P. But the point is, it's one of those things where I think the bears, and I don't want to say Bank of America is a bear. They are more bearish on this market, but they're not like a perma bear or anything. That's Michael Burry, who, by the way, last night tweeted that he rolled his puts on SOX, which is the semis index, for a debit because they were Jan 2027 330s. He had to, the index is like 500 right now. He had to roll them. He had to pay a debit. He's buying more time and essentially hoping that eventually this market will collapse because it might not happen by January 2027. But the point is, their bearish sentiment on the S&P being at 7,100. I mean, again, this is what Tom Lee said yesterday. He thinks there's going to be a 20% drawdown. Chris and I were on the market close, and I asked Chris, I was like, how do you think there's a 20% drawdown? How do you legit think that one of the biggest names in the world of finance, whether it's a Bank of America or a fund strat, is making the claim that we're going to experience a bear market in the summer before we end up getting back to a bull market? 20% down, even 15% down would be 6,300. Those are the March lows. 20% would be 6,000. How do we get there? And the only thing Chris could think of was CapEx slows down, which based on these Dell numbers, that's not going to happen this year. Maybe it happens next year. I'm a bit doubtful it happens in the next 2 years, but it's not happening in the summer. Google's not coming out saying they're spending less on CapEx in a couple months. So then if it's not CapEx, another war, I mean, like we went through a war, oil went to 100 and the S&P 500 went to all-time highs. And now we're on the back end of having that war end. So what is it going to be that really takes us down? And I don't want to be naive to say it can't happen, because obviously anything can happen. Markets can humble you very easily. But I'm also curious what would be that reason. And I think the sell side analysts that are upgrading all these stocks, and you could say they're chasing these stocks, but if you read some of the reports, they're also looking at the numbers. Even the people that are upgrading Micron, I can't blame them for upgrading Micron to these levels, because if they're saying, hey, Micron will still do $120 of EPS in 3 years, which means if you put a 10 times forward multiple 3 years out, it should still be a $1,200 stock. Now, maybe that earnings power isn't sustainable, and maybe there's some mistake they're making, and maybe it'll drop off massively in the fourth year. But the point is, in the short term, like, yeah, the stock probably has to go a bit higher. You could say leverage. You could say there's too much margin. You could say all those things that could definitely collapse the markets. You could say the SpaceX IPO is ridiculous at the valuation. That's going to create a liquidity event. That's going to mess up all the space stocks, and that could be the top. I mean, there's all these other theories that are out there. But in terms of the core fundamentals of some of the earnings growth outside of some of the speculation and euphoria that we're seeing, I think there's an argument for why the market can at least continue. But markets can humble people very quickly. And I don't think it would surprise us if we see this stuff end up going down. So that's what we got in terms of Bank of America's analysis going into this market. Triple V, thank you for the $200 super chat. Appreciate you being here. And thank you for the $200 super chat. Rick, thank you for the $20 super chat. Great communities of and friends, cover all important companies and industries for us. Keep up the good work. Rick, thank you for being here. And congrats on Marvell and Broadcom, because I know you are big in those. And Marvell 203 still had a massive run from 90s. And the fact that Marvell's not at 250, I think is actually healthy, because this thing was at $90 a couple months ago. And you could argue that it's consolidating. But if it does go to 250 or 220 anytime soon, I don't think anyone would be surprised. If it comes back down to 180, you wouldn't be surprised either. If Dell drops to 380 today, is anyone really going to be that upset? If Dell goes up to 460, 470, I also think after it got upgraded to $700 by 5 different analysts today, you also can't be that upset. So you're in a sweet spot for the market. And the biggest reason for this is this stat that I saw yesterday, which I think we talked about, but it just blows my mind. The S&P 500's forward earnings multiple has gone from 23 to 21, even though the index is up 10% this year. I mean, the index is up 10%, which is above average returns. and the multiple is compressed because the earnings estimates have gone up so much. It's unbelievable. It's unfreaking believable. And that's why I think there are so many bears, because it's hard to believe this rally, which is ironically a great thing for the bulls because there's a massive wall of worry. And if that wall of worry continues to be substantial, then, you'll have the next incremental buyer that's there to potentially buy some of these stocks. NVIDIA, not getting that much love. I understand it's kind of crazy to see one of their suppliers like Dell go up 40% a day and NVIDIA be flat, but NVIDIA can't go up 40%. Dell's a $200 billion market cap. NVIDIA's at $5 trillion. And I've come to the conclusion that at this point, if you own NVIDIA, you probably hold it because it's likely going to 10 trillion. If you don't own NVIDIA, if you buy it here, I don't think it's the thing that's unsafe to buy given the forward multiple. But if you're looking for pure alpha, there's obviously other things connected to NVIDIA that will probably outperform simply because they're smaller companies. And that's kind of the nature of how this market is turning out right now. So that's what we got. That is what we got. MongoDB had a massive earnings. They did reduce guidance on their Q2 call. So look at this. The stock went down to 255. Then it went up to 412. Then it came back down to 325. Now it's at 343. So crazy after-hour swings, but overall decent earnings for another software name. They just reduced guidance for one of their key metrics in the call, which is why the stock is not at 400 anymore, but it's still up a lot from a couple days ago. Snowflake still holding on to that 40% move. You got ServiceNow making moves. So these software names finally starting to get a little bit more momentum. And that's why it's very exciting to see them get some more green. Google, are we green pre-market? Google's at 385. That's slightly down. Again, Google's still up a lot year to date. That one's consolidating. And then Amazon right there, 271. That's also slightly down, as I think that is probably consolidating more as well. So those are some of your main updates. In terms of the other core stories that we have, Meta has been getting some upgrades as well. Bank of America upgraded them to 835, not because of the Meta subscription product, which I kind of think is not as relevant, but because the analyst sees Meta's new enterprise AI unit as a major opportunity for durable, less macro-sensitive monetization streams, aka the ability to sell compute. Enterprise sales could give Meta the optionality if there is a capacity overbuild. If there is a capacity overbuild, I think that's going to be kind of bearish, because if Meta's overbuilding, maybe Google's overbuilding, maybe Amazon's overbuilding, and I don't think you just want that sentiment to be out there that there's potentially some overbuilds. But if Meta doesn't need to use all the data center capacity that they're building because they don't have a cloud business like Google, Microsoft, or Amazon that is literally leasing out every GPU they can, then maybe it's actually bullish because that's another stream of revenue for Meta, and that can get the stock to go a bit higher. So time will tell, but you do have some upgrades coming in on Meta right now, and that's why it's starting to break out a little bit from the 630s. The Fed, we had some Fed speakers right here. Fed's Bowman says the Fed can look through energy shock if it stays credible on monetary policy. The Fed's current moderately restrictive policy aimed at aiding jobs. The longer the Middle East war goes on, the greater the risks are to inflation. Progress on lowering inflation has stalled. Reacting to energy shock would add unwarranted restraint. If the conflict persists, I will consider shifting my views. That's actually kind of bullish. Basically, she's saying that we can withstand energy issues. If the war ends soon, war continues, it's going to be hard for us to overlook the inflationary concerns, which then comes down to Trump and if he can end the war soon, which the only reason the market's pumping over the past couple of days is because the market assumes that, we will be able to end this war soon. So, hopefully, and that's another reason why, again, I think SoFi is moving. If the market really does think that we're going to get rate cuts and oil is going to come down, that should be bullish for more of the fintechs names. Shopify right there, 116, that broke out yesterday. ASTS again down 13% on that Blue Origin launch failure. Then CoreWeave, that's a 1.5%. Path had an okay earnings, but they missed on EPS by 6%. It just wasn't a quarter that you could be super impressed by as a software investor. And so I don't know that much about this company, but if you miss on earnings, in this market, it's pretty brutal. You've got to really deliver and over-deliver, quite frankly, to get a move, and Path did not do that. So that stock is still down. Amit, are you swing trading? I am learning how to trade, which actually is a funny, we got to address this. This was a funny thing that happened. So I posted this on my Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you can follow me. It's in the description. Instead of men going to therapy to deal with their issues, because, men have a lot of issues, instead of going to therapy, we end up buying 49-inch monitors to learn how to trade. Okay, like it's just the thing. This is what men do. You know, instead of going to therapy, we go to Best Buy and we buy these big ass monitors, and that's how we get through the thing. But I posted this on Instagram the other day, and notice in this picture, if you look real hard in this picture, there's a lighter on the table. There's a lighter. And all of these DMs, Amit, I didn't know you smoke. Amit, you get high and you trade. Oh my goodness, Amit, you smoke. I didn't know you smoke. Amit, oh my goodness. Can we be honest with each other, guys? Someone in the chat, can you actually, if you really know who I am, I think you guys know who I am, but why is there a lighter on the table? Why? Just think for a second before you assume that I'm getting high and waking up in the morning and talking to thousands of people, which honestly, I've never done that. I think that would be kind of crazy because if I try to do the market open high out of my mind, I don't know how I would have to say, guys, I'm high. I would have to take the walk of shame in front of thousands of you. I'd be like, wow, stocks are high and I'm high. Like that. That's basically how hopefully it's a green day because if it's not, it'd be bad. Thank you. I think you guys understand who I am based on what you guys are spamming in the chat. It's for my candles, okay? I have like 1,700 candles in this house that are like burned to the core. Like there's not even more that I could light on them. So that is why there was a lighter on the table. All these people, Amit, you smoke? It's like, no, bro. I just like vanilla chai, throughout the entire house. So yes, it's candles. It was just so funny. All these DMs, like, oh, dude, I didn't know you smoke. It's like, bro, I have candles that I don't know if that counts, but yeah, that's what we got. So there you go. 17. Okay, it's not literally 1,700 candles, but it's a lot. Like if you ever come to my apartment, there's like literally an entire drawer filled with candles. I have a lot of candles, a lot. Like I like them. I like the house smelling really. I have a candle freaking right here. This one's not lit this morning because I pretty much lit the entirety of it. Yeah, there's like a little bit more. I mean, there's a decent chunk, but it's hard to get your hand in there when you burn so much of it. So yeah, I'm a candles guy. But anyway, I am learning how to trade more. It is pretty exciting. I look at charts all day. And so, after 4 years of looking at charts all day, you start to get a little bit of an inclination of like how the chart moves. And got a really good mentor with Jason. He's been helping all of us learn how to trade more. So yes, I am getting into trading more. I don't feel comfortable enough to talk about it. I don't think I'm even 1% as good as Jason is. And I don't even know if I ever will be, but I am learning it. It is exciting. And, instead of going to therapy, learning how to trade. That's what we got to do. 6 minutes until the market opens. Put in the chat, what are you doing right now in the market? What are you buying? What are you selling? If you're in Dell, are you taking profits? SMCI popping on Dell, 9.78%. Do you have covered calls that are underwater? Are you rolling stuff? Curious to see what people are doing. We got a headline right here. UBS slashes hundreds of jobs during the Credit Suisse merger. This was inevitable. This merger was announced a couple weeks ago, so not that crazy to see that they're slashing some jobs. But, once again, labor markets are going to be in question over the coming years with this advance of AI. I'm done with crypto. I'm selling crypto. I'm thinking of buying ServiceNow. Oh, Big Bear AI, that's been moving a little bit over the past couple of weeks as well. That's up 6%. It was up 13% yesterday. Buying more ASTS, DCAing into SoFi. Buying more Redwire. Zoe says buying more spreads on ASTS. Steve almost bought SoFi debit spreads last night. We talked about it on the podcast. It didn't fill. If it had filled, his order was a little bit too low. His bid was a little bit too low. He would have been up a lot today, but it didn't fill. And he was buying them on Robinhood, and we talked about it on Basis Points yesterday. Robinhood made the process so easy versus some of these other platforms to buy spreads. So he almost ended up buying them, but he did buy a bunch of shares after the podcast, and so he is happy with the performance of the stock since then. NVIDIA right there, 214. That's up about 0.34%. I see people saying buying Oracle. Again, Oracle's made a massive move. The cool thing about all the stocks that are dead and now coming back to life is that they're still relatively cheap. Like Reddit at 167 is not expensive. Shopify at 116 is not that crazy. SoFi at $18 is still not that crazy. So some of these names, Zeta at 20, if they start to catch a bid from the broader market, and you talk about getting re-rated. I mean, when Zeta gets to 27, 28, it's not going back to 17, 18. And it's not that Zeta at $35 would still be less than a $10 billion market cap. And that's almost a double from here with a company that's going 50%. Like some of these have real fundamentals. And it's just a question of when they get re-rated, like Rocklab did. Nebius right there up 1.9%. I don't see a headline on Nebius, but that one making a little bit of a move right there. Obviously, they had a big headline this week with Leopold. Iran as well is up 1.49% as well. Cerebras. Oh, the Cerebras CEO, I listened to an interview of him this morning, and he kind of went to town on memory. And he was just like, we don't use any HBM. We use SRAM. There's no shortage of SRAM. We have no issues with memory. And, basically he was saying all the people that are stuck using HBM, they're going to have some issues because they're going to have to pay these massively high prices. Now, granted, I don't think NVIDIA is switching off HBM anytime soon. So at the end of the day, even if Cerebras is not using it, that doesn't mean that the entire industry is going to stop using it. But that might end up being the bull case for Cerebras if they can get their margins up. I know the valuation's a bit aggressive. They can get another couple of OpenAI clients paying $20 billion, and they don't have to rely on the massive level of supply imbalance on HBM because their chips don't need that. Maybe there is a bull case there. I don't love the valuation on Cerebras, but then again, I don't know if this market really cares about valuation on chip stocks. Eventually it might. Right now, it's more so about can they grow? And Dell, the valuation historically is at 16, 20 times earnings. Now it's at about 45 times. It's obviously trading double the 10-year multiple, but they're growing like crazy. And because they're growing like crazy, that is what matters. Palantir is coming back for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think the software narrative being dead is over. Number two, Trump did say to buy Palantir explicitly. And I saw a lot of people saying last night, well, Trump said Intel, Trump said Dell, Trump explicitly said Palantir, maybe this is the next one to run. And, I think Palantir's earnings more than justify it not being stuck in the 130s, but that could be another reason why the market brings a little bit of a bid here to Palantir. Wow, hoodie right there, 86. That's coming back as well in the pre-market as that goes green. Nebius up 2%, Zeta up 1.29. CoreWeave has also made a little bit of a move, 108. That was almost below 100 last night. 2 minutes until the market opens. All right, put in the chat, what do we think? Do we hold on to the pump? I guess I'll do the green or red poll. But realistically, the question is, does SoFi hold 10%? Does Palantir hold 5%? Does Reddit hold 3%? Does Nebius hold 4%? Like, do these names actually hold their gains on a Friday? We got a lot of options expiring today. Green or red today. By the way, the stocks that were traded the most yesterday in the options market, NVIDIA, Tesla, of course, Microsoft, Palantir, of course, all of those have been in the top 5 a while ago. The other one that got into the top 5, Ondas, baby. Drone stocks, 750,000 calls versus 170,000 puts. Maybe it's something to not overthink. Trump's investing in drones. Maybe the drones are going up. Micron, MicroStrategy, Hood, Apple, Meta, SMCI, Amazon, AMD, Ford, Oracle, SoFi, Intel, Nokia, Iren, and then Boston Scientific. Those were your top 20 stocks traded in the options market yesterday. Okay, 30 seconds. John 33X says mute gang gets ready. We need the no mute gang to get ready. Okay, Mr. John 33X, we need the no mute gang to overpower the mute gang because we are all alive. We are all breathing on planet Earth. And all of our stocks are finally starting to go up, which is why you cannot mute. Happy Friday, May 29th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. Palantir opens up at 148.30. That is green by 3% on the day. Dell, 31%. It was up 40% in the pre-market, still up 31%, 417 from yesterday. SoFi, are we holding 18? We are holding, unfortunately, not 18. This is classic SoFi, tends to get a big pump in the pre-market, then it dumps. Let's at least hold 17. That would make me a happy camper today. That's up 4.7%. Maybe you're getting some people selling from the pre-market and then we get a reversal, but that stock at least up 5% as we get into the print. Dell right there up 32%. Cerebras, that's up 1%. Nebius goes red, 226 down. ASTS, this was kind of expected. Again, Blue Origin's launch failed pretty badly yesterday with a massive explosion. So sentiment on the space stocks probably not going to be the best today. Rocket Lab, that's down 7%, loses 140. Zeta, that's up 3. Oracle, that's up 3. ASTS down 15. Amazon, that's flat. Google, that's down about 1.6. ServiceNow loses 120 to 117. Still, this thing was at 99 literally on Tuesday. So the fact that it's at 117, not too bad. NVIDIA goes red. Marvell goes red. Micron still pumping, 957. Micron not slowing down. Shopify still making a move. Bitcoin below 73, loses 73,000. Adobe, that's up 2%. Bloom Energy, that goes down as well. Okay, so you are seeing some of the semi and energy names get hit. Nebius, red. CoreWeave, red. Bloom, red. Iren, red. ASTS and Rocket Lab, red. And then NVIDIA, red. Where's AMD? AMD was 520 yesterday. AMD 518. That's still holding on. Ford is almost $17. That's making a move. Microsoft, oh my, 438. Cactus just texted the terminal, don't mute the bell. Cactus, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. 437 on Microsoft. All right, so remember, the big update on Microsoft is they might be selling chips to Anthropic. On top of that, Microsoft has a software business, and if software is in favor and they're selling chips, Microsoft's going higher. Microsoft, if this rotation lasts, Microsoft is going higher. I don't think it's expensive here. Obviously, it's been cheap for the past year. It's been in a bear market for the past year. If you bought the dip on Microsoft, boom, you're getting some love right here. 438.40, up 2.4%. Is Meta joining the party? Meta is not. 631, but at least that's at 630. Salesforce, are we getting a bid? Salesforce is getting a bid, 5%. Okay. So Microsoft's up on the software narrative. Palantir's up on the software narrative. Salesforce, little delayed reaction after earnings. That's up 5%. SoFi still holding on to 17.95, almost at 18. And then Hoodie is trying to go for 87. If we end up breaking 90, that would be pretty incredible. Oh my goodness. Palantir trying to go for 150. Dell trying to go for 425. Zeta trying to go for 21. Today is a day potentially of comebacks for a lot of the laggards of this year. Snowflake, almost 250. MongoDB, that's up 3%. ARM, still having a good day. That's up 3%. Apple, all-time highs on Mr. Apple at 315. Market obviously wanting to be in a name that is getting ready to introduce a lot of stuff in WWDC. I was reading an article last night. Apple's major focus for WWDC is going to be Siri. Now, hopefully that's true. Sometimes these articles speculate on stuff that's not the most accurate. But if it's a Siri-led WWDC, I think the market's going to be like, okay, they have billions of devices. They can plug into whatever LLM. They don't have to spend on CapEx. And then boom, Siri's the real deal if it's agentic. And maybe that's your thesis right now on Apple. Microsoft 437, Meta losing 630, Salesforce 185. Zeta, are we getting 21? We touched it. Let's see if we can get above it. There you go, 21. Again, Zeta around that 24, 25 range like it was at in January, I think gets re-rated. I don't think we have to visit the 17, 18s anymore, but we got to really push through over the coming weeks, and hopefully that happens. SoFi back to 18. Robinhood almost 87 right there. There you go, back to 87 on Hood. Palantir trying to fight for 150. It has not touched 150 yet, 149.53. Google's getting dumped right here. Interesting. Maybe a little rotation from Google to Microsoft, although Google is up a lot year to date. Microsoft is still red. Year to date, CrowdStrike almost 700, 692, and then you got SMCI following Dell, as that is up 10.5%. SMCI was $19 a couple of weeks ago. Not too bad, guys. Not too bad. Really helping out a lot of portfolios in this bull market. If Bitcoin comes back, that would be the cherry on top to get a lot more participants. But the fact that Robinhood, which has been a lot of people's, definitely mine, my Bitcoin proxy. The fact that it's diverged away is nice to see because there's a lot of other stuff in the Robinhood thesis outside of Bitcoin. And you're starting to see potentially that get priced in. Maybe a little too early to tell, but 73 to 87 is a pretty big move. Rocket Lab down 6%. Again, Rocket Lab's up a lot over the past month. If you bought at 150, you're probably a little annoyed, but space sentiment on a day like this is not going to be the best. 137. I could see this dip getting eaten up really quickly, though, going into the SpaceX IPO. That's still going to be a massive catalyst. And so you might have some funds that step in to play the IPO right before it, which could create a lot more momentum on the stock. Micron right there holding up like a champ, 964. So you're not seeing Micron have to go down for the rest of the market to rotate, which is good. And you're not having to see the semi stock or the software stocks go down just for Micron to go up. S&P 500 all-time highs at 756 as well, as that's continuing to make a broader move right here as it goes green. Corning right there, that's basically flat on the day. Your Photonics plays not making a massive move. Lumentum is down about 2.3. Coherent is down about 1.9. Again, a lot of these names had a big run already. So for the names that had a big run, you literally cannot complain if they take a 10 to 15% haircut. They've had multi-100% runs. For the names that are down 30 to 40% year to date, you also can't complain if they go up 10, 15% because it's like they'll still be down a lot year to date with that run. And maybe that's a little bit of what we're seeing. Salesforce right there at $4 or up 4%, I should say. 183. Zeta up 4.6%. ASTS, is that getting hit? That is getting hit pretty bad. 16% down on Mr. ASTS. How much money's on the sidelines? $8 trillion as of yesterday. Money market funds have officially passed $8 trillion. So there's plenty of money on the sidelines. I wonder if that money looks at Microsoft and Meta and says, you know, these stocks should not be trading at these levels. Microsoft right there, almost 440, and maybe comes out. But today, I think you're seeing a little bit more rotation, not out of like the big names, but out of some of these smaller parts of the semi-trade into different areas. But the fact that it's not leaving the big names means that the market is okay with a Micron and Nebius being green and a Palantir and a Zeta and a SoFi being green, which is good to see. ServiceNow right there, 116.50. That is also green. Amit, I sold my Apple today, planning to ride into one between Meta, Nvidia, or Amazon. What do you think? All right, chat, what do you think? This person sold their Apple, and they are debating between Meta, Nvidia, or Amazon. To be honest, I don't hate that. I don't know what your average is on Apple, but Apple at all-time highs. Apple's premium is pretty freaking expensive, and yes, it's probably a stock that you hold forever, but if you made some decent gains on that, I do not hate rotating into the one of the other three. And I think all three are decent. I mean, the most undervalued is Meta at the end of the day. It's more undervalued than Nvidia. Now, granted, Nvidia's sentiment is way better than Meta, but Nvidia, as we've seen, it's hard to move a $5 trillion company. Meta's $1.5 trillion. I mean, it's not going to be that hard to move Meta versus Nvidia. And then Amazon, like I love Amazon, but you know, I think the biggest catalyst this year has already happened, which is AWS acceleration. So the question is going to be, what's the new thing for the street to get excited about? But maybe just split it between all three. It's also not a crazy idea. IBM right there, that's up 4.6%. Circle, that's up 1.5%. Enphase, are we making a move? We are making a bit of a move on Enphase. That's up 5%. Someone just bought $3.8 million of calls on Micron expiring June 12th. Strike 1,015. Strike 1,015. So you got a lot of call flow coming into Micron. What is the reason for why ASTS is down? There was an explosion yesterday for Blue Origin. Thankfully, no one got hurt, but it was a pretty aggressive explosion. It was that and this Bloomberg article that said SpaceX's valuation is going to be lowered from what was initially suggested. And I don't know what numbers they're using for this, but that in general got the market to be a little afraid that there's not enough demand for the IPO. If there's not enough demand for the SpaceX IPO, there's probably not enough demand for all the SpaceX proxies, right? So I think that's part of the reason why this got hit. But this is the angle for the Blue Origin launch that didn't go well yesterday. But again, Space has had a massive run. It's had a massive freaking run. Taking a breather, not that crazy. Google down 3. Okay, I kind of think Google is being sold off to go into Microsoft, at least just a little bit. Google's been stuck ever since their event, which has been kind of weird. Zeta, you're getting a breakout. 2129 hoodie, you're getting a breakout. Up 4%. Did we touch 150 on Palantir? We have touched 150. After a month of one of the best earnings we have seen in the history of earnings, we are back to 150. The market finally giving us some love. Palantir 150, Robin at 88, Zeta 2127, AMD 520 as well. That one making a move. And then SoFi, can we go back to 19? It was at 1980 pre-market, 1825. Let's see. Maybe there's a shot right here to get this thing up. Broadcom's hitting a new all-time high. You know, okay, so here's an honest question for everybody. Here's an honest question. Be honest about this. For those that don't own Broadcom, you just saw Dell hit an all-time high before its print, and then you saw those numbers, and it went up another 30%. If you don't own Broadcom, you know their numbers are going to be ridiculous. Like we all know. If Micron's numbers and Dell's numbers and SMCI numbers and NVIDIA's numbers are ridiculous, and AMD's numbers and Intel's, we know Broadcom's going to demolish earnings. Would you buy it? Do you have the stomach to buy it at all-time highs right now? New capital, fresh position, assuming it's going to go to 550 and have a 10, 20% move. Because that was the same scenario you were in for Dell. And I don't know how many people had the stomach to be able to buy it at 280, 300, but now Dell's at 420, right? And so this is the issue. Like you can't complain when Broadcom goes up to 550 after they demolish earnings if you don't have the stomach to buy it at all-time highs, but it's really hard to buy something at all-time highs. Okay, everyone's saying no. So that's my point, right? You probably would have said no on Dell or on Dell. You're probably going to say no on Micron, buying it at 950 before earnings. It's like you can't complain when it goes up like crazy after hours. If you knew in your heart of hearts you were not willing to take the risk to buy it going into the print, even if you know the print is going to smash, because sometimes you just don't have the stomach to deal with the potential downside of the volatility. ASTS getting really hit right here. 17% I think is a bit aggressive for the launch, but it is down 17%. Coherence down 3. Microsoft's up 3. 440 has been achieved on Mr. Microsoft. Microsoft year to date, how much is that still down? I think it's almost break even. No, it's still down 7%. It's still underperforming the S&P. And that's why I think you might have some bigger money coming into this now that they're seeing these levels. MP's down 10. I don't know why, or sorry, down 3. So some of your rare earth plays are getting hit. You don't know if it's going to go up even if it smashes. See, well, that's fair. No one knows if it's actually going to go up if it smashes. But every semiconductor stock that is smashed has gone up, right? And so people feel bad that they don't have Dell, but it's like, dude, were you really going to buy it even if you knew they were going to smash? Because it's hard to buy something that pumps 3x in a month. Dell was $100 in March. It was $310 before earnings. Do you have the ability to buy something like that knowing that it's still going to go up? And if you don't, then you don't feel bad if it goes up, because it's like, it is what it is, right? At that point, you knew you wouldn't be able to hold it. But if you bought some things that were cheap and beat up, like a Palantir, like an SMCI, which is flagging Dell right now, like a Zeta, like a Salesforce, you're not too upset today. Amazon flipping green, Palantir, maybe, just maybe, folks, we're seeing a re-rating on a company that kind of destroyed earnings, and that's putting it lightly. 150, 250. Let's see if we can crack through that 153. Micron still 950. That's holding up. NVIDIA just flipped green. NVIDIA 215.70. That is also going up. I literally would have bought the computer, not the stock. Exactly. That's the issue. That's what I did. I didn't buy a Dell. I bought an Intel PC the other day versus buying the stock. And the stock probably will outperform. But still, it's just, it's really, really hard to buy into all-time highs. It's easy to buy something when it's beaten up. It's just hard to be patient buying it when it's beaten up. But these are the days where you're like, oh yeah, buying Zeta at 17 after they grew 50% and fell 20% on earnings wasn't the worst idea in the world, And I think so many of us have that story with so many different stocks in the portfolio. CrowdStrike passes 700. Oracle as well. Oracle gets the dual benefit of being a data center play and a software play. So sometimes when software goes down, it's hedged with the data center component of its business. When data centers go down, it has NetSuite, which is a big software business. And so Oracle kind of in a sweet spot, even with their debt. Also, I think their credit default swaps have peaked. I mean, I don't think the street's going to be betting that Oracle is going bankrupt, especially with OpenAI having so much money to pay them. So Oracle right there getting a 7% move. By the way, Anthropic raised at they raised $65 billion yesterday at a $965 billion valuation. SpaceX is going to raise $75 billion when they go public. Anthropic raised $65 billion in the private markets. So they raised 85% of what SpaceX was going to raise in the private markets, which is crazy. And they unveiled a new model. Guess what happened? The software stocks didn't go down. That is why I'm feeling more comfortable about software today. Because yesterday, when Anthropic raised at a new valuation and they released a new model, you would think the software stocks would get destroyed. And they're not. They're not getting destroyed because I think the market's moving on from this stupid narrative. And that's allowing these companies to participate. By the way, Anthropic, path right here down 6%. Anthropic kept the pricing for 4.8 the same as 4.7. Which is really important because the fact that they're not raising prices isn't bearish Anthropic, but it does mean that people have had enough of paying these massive token costs. And Anthropic knows that if they raise the prices, even if their CapEx justifies it and the model quality justifies it, people will just go to a different model, or they're going to use something that's open source, something that's way cheaper. And so you are seeing a little bit of a limit in terms of people's propensity and enterprises' propensities to actually pay for all these tokens, which is good because you're going to start to see token costs normalize. That doesn't mean demand is going to go down, but it does mean that these expenses are not going to be as massive. And that's also going to be a bullish argument for the software companies that are processing all those tokens as well. Broadcom, that's up 5% on the day as that continues to go green. I mean, what's your average in Nokia? 1398. Bought it about 2 weeks ago. Nokia 1507. Again, I think the real dip on Nokia is back to 13. I don't know if we're going to be greedy enough to get that, but I think for the semis, some of them are down, but they're really not down that much. Nokia is still up a lot year to date. Corning is still up a lot year to date. Micron is still up a lot year to date. So although Micron's down from 980, I don't know if 950 is your dip. Intel. I mean, this thing got to 100 last week. Was that the dip from 120? Maybe, but it still trades at 85 times forward earnings. Like at some point, you want a real deal, and a real deal would be closer to 75, 80 bucks on Intel, but I don't know if the market's going to give that. So the real deal for the past year has been software stocks and fintech stocks. And, that deal is starting to become a little bit more apparent. Obviously, semis were on sale massively in March, but if you didn't load up on them, then now I think just being a little bit more patient is important. Nebius right there, 231. That's up 2.4% as well. Nebius, the only green NeoCloud that's here today. We do have PMI 62.7. Wow. Versus 50.3. What a beat. Oh my. 62.7 versus 50.3. That's an incredibly large beat right there. S&P continues to be green on that. Might not be the best for inflation, but definitely decent for earnings growth.
And other PMIs that have a bigger audience, like, service sector, other manufacturers. This one's off the charts. 62.7. 62.7. We're expecting a number around 50. Our last look was sub 50 at 49.2, the weakest of the year. We now go to the strongest number that we've had since January of 22. Call it 4.5 years. This is a huge statement about manufacturing, and we've seen anecdotal evidence of other areas. Richmond manufacturing picking up. We've seen a few spurts of jobs in manufacturing couple of jobs ago. So this is something to pay attention to, and it might give us a sentient look into what is going on. The onshoring, many have made fun of this administration's goal to do that, but some of these numbers are really reflecting a positive sign in manufacturing. Now, how are the markets reacting to this? Rates have turned up a little bit. Stocks are on more green because of this. And let's look at
rates are up, stocks are up. That's a big PMI beat. Obviously, there's some inflation concerns when you have that big of a beat, but overall, if oil comes down, inflation shouldn't be that big of an issue. Oh my goodness, S&P 757. Qualcomm getting a pump here as well, 258. So this is being kind of selective today. Your Qualcomms, your Microns, they're going green. And then your Coherence Lumentums, they're going red. Your software names are still holding up. And you're starting to see more participation. Rocket Lab back to 140 from 139. ASTS, so you're still down 18%. ASTS down 17, so not as bad, but still obviously down. NVIDIA just flipped green. Palantir still holding 152. You're seeing a lot of different names. ServiceNow almost back to 120. Snowflake 245. Marvell flipped green. Where is Ondas? Why is Ondas down 9%? Did they dilute again today? That's got to be the reason. That's got to be the reason. It's got to be dilution. Someone tells me it's dilution. I don't know. It went up a lot yesterday. If it's not dilution, it's probably just people selling. But you got some of your drone stocks that are down, and your quantum stocks are down. D-Wave is down as well. Okay, so quantum and drones getting sold off, but semis and software not really getting sold off. Dell right there, 423.60. Every time Amit says, oh my goodness, my heart skips a beat. I should say it next time and then have no news. She'd be like, oh my goodness. My candle isn't lit. Like I should say something like that. That should trip people up for a second. ASTS still down. This is actually an oh my goodness chart. Let me share this right here. And this is why, it's a little scary in this market, just a little bit. So this is the largest levered single stock ETFs from January 2025 to May of 2026. As you can see right here, 2x Tesla, a lot of volume, 2x NVIDIA, a lot of volume, but 2x SK Hynix and 2x Micron, a lot of volume. So there is a decent chunk of the leveraged ETFs catching a bid. And that part definitely scares me in this market, but nonetheless, if people are going to lever up, people are going to lever up. There's not much more you can do. Netflix, is that down today? Netflix is red, 85.73. As that one is taking a hit. Micron, 970. I think she wants to go to 1,000, folks. I think she wants to go to 1,000. Dell and Micron both making that move. Dell right there, 34% Micron. Okay, if you own these two, what are you doing? That is the question. If you own Dell, are you selling, calls, profits, buying more? And then same thing here with Micron. Mamba, thank you for the super chat. I have a lot of candles. This is Grinder pickup line. That's actually kind of funny, but that is not my pickup line. Okay, I have a different pickup line. It's not on Grinder. Okay, but that is kind of funny. Blue Shift, thanks for the super chat. Apple is about to have the most significant new product release since the iPhone. I'm holding leaps. Yeah, I think the hardware product that they put out with foldable phones or whatever, that hopefully goes well, but I really think the Agentic series stuff is going to be what re-rates the stock again. And we'll find out in a couple weeks when they have the conference. Broadcom, all-time highs. Micron, basically all-time highs. And Dell at all-time highs. So you're seeing three of the big ones go up. I'm seeing most people saying just hold. Few people saying sell. Tess says I own both, watching them ride. A couple people saying hold. Seems like no one's selling calls on them, which I think is a good thing to not do because the calls are getting destroyed, although the premiums are incredible. SanDisk also got upgraded to like $3,000 from one of the freaking analysts yesterday. Got a bunch of $25 upgrades, another $3,000 upgrade. And so there you go. Your memory trade is not slowing down. Microsoft right there at 440. What do you think about Grab? I think the fundamental problem with Grab still right now is two things. Number one, sentiment is no one really cares about international stocks. And number two is oil prices are still pretty high in Southeast Asia because of the Iran conflict. The only way you hedge against this is, again, you got to be diversified, right? If you're all in one stock, until that stock ends up moving, you're stuck. Now, if you're all in SoFi until today, you're having some fun. If not, then there's a lot of other names that are moving. So I think eventually we'll have its day, but once again, you just can't do much about it. You either lose this thesis, lose the story, and go away. Again, I've said it over and over again, the thesis has not been disrupted. Go through their Q1 earnings. There's nothing to change there. The stock obviously hasn't moved. So you have to ask yourself, do you believe in the thesis or do you want something that has more volatility? And there's plenty of things that has more volatility. But I think its day will eventually come. It's just, once again, it's testing your patience. And sometimes you don't have a lot of patience to be tested. Same thing with Meta. I mean, this thing has tested patience for the past year and a half now, although their growth is undeniable, just like a lot of other companies that have growth that is freaking incredible, profitable growth. They're not diluting. They're not doing anything shady. The market doesn't care. Market cares about Micron. The market cares about the semi trade. And thankfully, the market's starting to care about some of the other sectors. But, if your sector is not getting any love right now, Nubank also, this one, massive earnings. This thing is basically stuck at $13 for the entire year. At this point, it's more so about being patient with it. Rock Lab falling just below 140. Figma had a massive move yesterday, so I understand why Figma's not moving today. It was up 15% yesterday, so it's not that crazy for Figma to take a bit of a breather. Grab just needs to sell memory. Exactly. That, honestly, they set up an HBM fab. That would work. But in all seriousness, it's really a test of patience. And if you don't have patience for stuff, it's okay. Like in this market, when something goes up 40% in a day and you're holding a stock that hasn't moved in a year, like I get it. Most investments theoretically take some time. If you look at Rocklab, Palantir's, Hood's charts, there were 2 to 3 years of nothing to be able to sit through that. BlackBerry, I mean, dude, perfect case study. BlackBerry's at $9. 2 years of stuck. Not 2 years. 2 years ago, I think people started getting interested, but really 10 years of doing nothing. And then it popped. And so even 6 months this year, January to May, basically did nothing until recently it popped. So it's a test of patience when it comes to if you think there's a real thesis that will be respected. Dell right there, 426. That continues to go green. DRAM, that's also moving as well. Amit, does it feel like SoFi is getting a squeeze? I don't think SoFi is squeezing here. The shorts are pretty resilient on SoFi. I think there's a rate cut narrative and a SoFi USD narrative that might be coming into the picture. Now, if we see this thing get above 20, maybe there's a squeeze. But at least, it was at 1550 for the past 2 months. At one point fell below 15. The fact that we're at 18, I'm very happy about that, but I don't think it's squeezing yet. IGV, that's up 3% as well. I've been holding BlackBerry for ages. It's finally breaking out. There you go. Yeah, you're right. BlackBerry was much higher in 2021 when it had peak euphoria. That is fair. In 2021, it got to what? $29. So basically, for the past 6 years, you've had to hold it through 29 to 2. And if you entered around $2 in 2024, it's been about 2 years of a wait. But now it's quadrupled. And so the question is just when these narratives start to line up with what the market cares about. Micron, let me check resistance at 1,000. It looks like it wants to get there. Where is Tesla? We didn't even look at Tesla today. Tesla is flat, which is better than being red. So that's not horrible. Micron, 1,000 resistance. What do you think about SMCI following Dell up? I think SMCI is probably going to have massive numbers once again. Do you buy SMCI after it's 2.5x? I don't know. It's the same thing with Dell yesterday, right? You buy it into strength, hoping the strength continues. Like some of these names, you're either buying them into their strength, hoping and praying that they crush so hard that it becomes undeniable that the street has to take them higher, which is what happened with Dell, or you don't gamble on it. And for SMCI, it's already made such a massive move. I know it hasn't had earnings yet, and they probably are not going to have Dell type earnings, but they're probably going to have really good earnings. But what if the earnings are good enough and then it has a Celestica or a Rambus where, they crush earnings, but then the stock falls because it was just up so much. But nonetheless, their earnings should be pretty good. Micron is 84,000 shares. 84,000 shares at resistance for 1,000. Pound share 153. 153 as that continues to go green. Red Cat is down 11%. SMCI already had earnings. Yeah, I mean, this is now after earnings, right? So if you're buying it here, you're buying it on a catalyst going into the next quarter's earnings. Because otherwise, what would be the catalyst, right? If you buy it right now at 47 after the Dell earnings, I mean, maybe the catalyst was Dell earnings, but the time to buy it was yesterday. So now the next catalyst has to be earnings. And maybe you assume they can put up the types of numbers Dell put up. Dell beat by 8 billion, guys. Like that, like I get it. It's a hardware business, low margin, not sustainable type of growth. But when you beat by that level, even if Dell eventually dumps, it's going to be re-rated for a while. Like the street's just not going to let this thing fall all the way back to 200 after you put up that type of growth. I mean, the market really cares about growth. Like in this AI revolution, I think that's one of the reasons Salesforce hasn't moved as much as it should be moving, even though it's undervalued and they're buying back $30 billion worth of stock because they're just not growing like crazy on the top line. And when you are, even if you sell a hardware product, the market's ready to pay a premium. SanDisk almost 1,700. ServiceNow, are we back to 120? Very close, 119.90. 119.90 for ServiceNow. Nvidia, 217. Okay, a little breakout here for Nvidia. Little breakout. What striker your mom's covered calls? 18 for next week. I mean, I haven't rolled them yet, obviously. I've been live for the past 2 hours. But at 1980, it would be a harder roll. At 18, it's not as hard of a roll. So we'll see. Probably will roll it out to 20 a month from now. The thing about SoFi, again, is it'll have a monster move and it'll give up a lot of it. And I kind of expected that going into the market open. But as long as it keeps some of it and makes that turn into support, you got to be happy, dude. You got to be happy. So if we even close at 1750, I'd be pretty happy. But now we just got to see if we can get that close. Shopify, 115. Now, there you go. 120 for service currently right now. 120. Micron, 980. I got to be dreaming. Micron and ServiceNow going up together. This has got to be a dream. By the way, guys, something's changed in my soul or my body. I don't know what you want to call it. I am waking up every day at 5:30 without an alarm clock. It is weird. This has never happened before. It is weird. My body naturally just getting up at 5:30. I wake up and I think I'm late for the market openers. It's 5:30. What is going on? And then I can't go back to sleep. So I'm starting my days very early. But I've been also dreaming like crazy, and I feel like I'm living the dream right now. Micron and ServiceNow going up. Like, it's called getting older. Does that happen when you get older? You wake up earlier? Don't you sleep longer when you get older? Maybe it's the opposite. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting older. But ServiceNow, 120.50. Micron right there, 976. This is crazy, dude. Every day it's been ServiceNow up, Micron down, Micron up, ServiceNow down. They're both participating. It's quite beautiful to see. You know, we're all on the same planet, different genders, races, nationalities, but we're all human, right? We're all the same. We're all stocks at the end of the day, different PE ratios, different CEOs, different narratives. We're still all stocks at the end of the day. In a bull market, think of the bull market like planet Earth and think of stocks like humans. We're all, you know, it's my best way to cope for the fact that software's been dead all year. But still, we all deserve some love. Palantir, 150 freaking 4. It was 137 yesterday. This is so beautiful. This is unbelievable. This is unfreaking believable. I admit you need more sleep after that analogy. You're probably right about that. I do. Where is Poet? Where is Poet? Down 10%. Okay, so Poet not participating today in this bull market for stocks. But, you know, stock was at 6. Now, here's the thing. Again, if you bought Poet at 25 when it was running up and everyone thought they missed it from 6, it's now at 11. If you bought SoFi at 15, it's now at 18. So, yes, SoFi wasn't as exciting, but it was fundamentally the more sound company. I think we can all agree. Maybe Poet's more exciting for whatever reason, but like SoFi was more fundamentally sound. They're doing $4 billion in revenue. And not chasing is being rewarded. Now, over the past couple of months, chasing has been, if you loaded up Poet at 6 and it went to 25, you quadrupled your money. But the ability for a retail investor to size appropriately and then time the exit, it just doesn't happen often. Most people, including myself, suck at doing that. And so, you know, that's where FOMO ends up really hurting you versus just being patient and buying the shit that you know and not crying about it because you know it's a fundamentally sound company. Palantir right there trying to go for 155. Bob, thank you for the super chat. Thanks, Amit and friends. I hit an all-time high in my Roth IRA. Not bad considering I've retired and only spending for the last 3 years. Love this group. Bob, thank you for being here. The great thing is in your Roth IRA, even if you take some gains, you are not going to have to worry about paying taxes. So congrats to you, man. Absolutely incredible. I think a lot of portfolios are probably starting to see maybe not officially all-time highs, but closer to all-time highs, especially because these laggards are catching up. And, you know, that's why it's fun for everyone to participate. Micron right there, 970. ServiceNow, 121. As that continues to go green. And then Palantir, there you go, 155. 155. Zeta, can we get 22? Can we get 22? 2181 on Mr. Zeta. Palantir is busting right through. This is the earnings reaction we've been waiting for. And it looks like it's happening a month later. But it looks like it's happening. 155.70. That's up 8.6%. Dell still up 33%. As the market continues to go higher. Wow, Reddit, 171. They took this stock down from this price on earnings. I think it was 171, 173 to 142 after showing 70% revenue growth. For what reason? Oh, it's theoretically a software company. Like the level of opportunity on some of these names, whether it was ServiceNow, Shopify, Palantir, Zeta, Reddit, it's finally starting to be rewarded. Salesforce, finally, 7% move. $153 billion market cap, doing $40 billion of revenue a year. Yeah, the earnings call kind of sucked, but at the end of the day, we all know this thing probably is undervalued. And if you bought recently, you're getting rewarded, even if you've been stuck in it all year. And that's what should happen in a bull market. A bull market should not be stuck in one sector, right? Like a bull market being stuck in one sector just feels toppy. It feels weird. It's like one thing cannot carry the entire issue with 2024 was that we only had a couple of Max 7s carrying the whole market, which is what happened in 2025. We really broadened out. And in 2026, the Max 7s have kind of sucked outside of a couple of them. It went all to the semis, but you know, the semis, the ironic thing about the semis is all the hardware that is being bought to create better models is being used by the software companies. Like there is no demand for all this memory and all this photonics and all these GPUs and CPUs if there's not an application, whether it's your phone or whether it's an enterprise workflow on ServiceNow, that is using the freaking models. And so the most laughable thing about this entire paradox of how the rally has happened is that the companies that are creating the demand or the companies that are spending the CapEx aren't benefiting. And maybe that's going to start to shift. And if that does, that would be bullish. Amid, I have 148 pound tier calls. What would you do? I don't think you're in too much trouble. 148 can easily be rolled. I know it's up a couple bucks here, but I would just roll it out a month, go to 160, 165, a couple months. I don't think you have to. Remember, when you're stuck in a covered call that's underwater, you have to ask yourself, am I okay with the shares getting called away, or do I want to keep the shares? Because if you want to keep the shares, you don't care about collecting the premium anymore. So then you roll it out to a very conservative date, unless you're super underwater. Like if you had $100 covered calls on Pound or 130, you're in a tough position. You're at 148. It's at 155. Your break even's probably 152. You're not in the worst spot. So roll it out a couple months or a couple weeks, get up to a higher strike. If you pay a debit, I don't think you're going to have to pay a debit, but if you do have to pay a debit, you're basically paying back the credit that you got. So you're not technically losing money because you're just paying back the credit that you got from the initial call. And you're going to be okay. But if the software names are coming back and you had calls on ServiceNow, like sold calls or Zeta or anything, now it's time to really think, hey, is the narrative flipping? And if the narrative's flipping, it's time to get rid of those covered calls. Ondas right there was down 10. Now it's down 7.2. So that one is getting a little bit more love. VG is down 2.4 because oil is down 12.23. I still think VG is going to be pretty important when it comes to energy in general, especially when we think of how much energy is needed for data centers. But this one is definitely trading as a proxy to the market going up. Tesla, are we bleeding? Okay, Tesla's now starting to get a little bit more hit, 435. NVIDIA getting some love back at 217. Let's see if we can get this to 220. Hood, are we dumping? We were at 88. We are at 86, which I will take. Touched 89 for a second. And that stock now down 2.39%. Hood was one of the stocks I day traded the heaviest yesterday. Bought it at 79. No, I bought it at 79.20. Sold it at 79.40. I was happy. Then I was like, this thing's good. Then bought it at 80. Then I sold it at $80.20. And then I was like, screw it, bro. And then I bought it at 82 and it just kept going up and up and up. And then I finally sold it at like 82.70. And then it went to 85. And I was like, oh my goodness, I should have just bought it at 79 and left the screen and let this thing go up $5. And I would have made a lot of money yesterday. But, when Hood runs, it freaking runs. 86.79 on the days. That's great. Zeta hit 22. Did we do it? Wow, 22. Haven't seen it since freaking September. Or sorry, January. It's been a while. It's been a while. It's been a freaking while. But there it is. Must be scalping with size. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. My strategy is buy a lot and then look for a small move and then take some profit in there. Now, that's my strategy of trading. I don't know if that's always going to be my strategy. A lot of people do it with options. Jason is like a master at learning how to swing the option in a certain direction. And so, certain people do certain things, but I just like the game of being able to understand when to enter and when to exit and come in with size. And it's fun, dude. Like, it's really fun. And like, yeah, it's not and again, the past couple of weeks, I've been doing it with like 5 shares, 10 shares, like stuff to like learn because obviously I don't want to get burned. Yesterday was one of the first days that I actually did it with some size and the practice started paying off. I'm sure I will take losses soon as well. Not every day is going to be amazing, but you got to lose a little bit to start understanding how to, it's your tuition, right? You got to lose some money in order to, you got to get stopped out plenty of times. I think as a trader, if your hit rate is over like 65%, you're doing well. But everyone has a different style. And with options, I just don't understand options enough to swing them. Like I really don't. So that's why for me, equity is just easier. So show us your technique. I don't have a technique enough to show anybody. Trust me, when I actually think I'm confident enough to show people, I'll show people. But I'm like, I literally bought my monitor 2 days ago. It's going to take at least another few months for me to feel even comfortable. But I look at charts all day. And so when you look at, and I understand, a decent chunk of fundamentals, and I have a pretty good eye on the macro. So when Hood was running yesterday, it was kind of obvious, like, oh, this is going to hold up, right? Took a trade on Shopify yesterday. That one worked out as well, breaking out from 110. I sold it at 111, ended up going to 116. But, there's some of these things you can actually look at and it's not that crazy. Ford is up 43% this month. Unfreaking believable. 1750. 1750. It's massive, dude. It's freaking massive. Ford, out of all things. Out of all freaking things. Well, I guess the market's thinking they're going to be a data center play potentially to help with energy. So that's why it's getting this love. You could probably short Ford here. See, here's the thing. Okay, put in the chat, what is a stock you would short right now? I don't think anyone should be shorting stocks right now because, theoretically, yes, I think some of these valuations are crazy, but how do you short a Dell right here? Like maybe Dell goes back to 400, but the risk of taking a short right here, is it worth being shorted? Versus it just, people who shorted Micron when it fell to 880 2 days ago, face getting ripped off right now, right? Like SMCI, Rocket Lab, ASTS. Wow, so a lot of people saying ASTS. Okay, the space names definitely, I will agree, are pretty freaking expensive. But if that SpaceX IPO goes well, I don't know, dude. I'm not buying them here. I don't know if they're a short right now. Rocket Lab 137. I do think that the SpaceX valuation is stupid. I'm just gonna be honest. I think $2 trillion is absolutely insane. So there is a good chance that the SpaceX IPO doesn't go the way Elon wants it to go, which has a cascading effect on all the space stocks, which will create the short. But what if it does? What if it goes to $3 trillion? I think Rocket Lab's going back to $100. If SpaceX is at $3 trillion, no way. At least I don't think that's as likely. So yeah, I think some of these names maybe don't deserve to be shorted. ARM, okay, ARM is kind of, has anyone really looked at ARM's valuation? ARM is, I get that they get a royalty on all this CPU demand. ARM's valuation is kind of dumb. Nonetheless, I don't think I would short it, but like Dell's valuation makes more sense than ARM. But ARM's getting a bunch of price target upgrades, and doesn't matter if it trades at 100 times sales. Like, it is what it is. Market is rewarding CPU growth. NVIDIA right there, 216, as that continues to go green. I wouldn't short Tesla here. Look, Tesla's always been quote unquote expensive, but the SpaceX merger theme is kind of more prevalent than not. Although I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So, but you can't say, oh, I'm shorting Tesla because their earnings suck. It's like the earnings have sucked for 4 years. No one's cared, right? The stock does not trade on earnings. So I don't know if that's the reason. Big Bear going down. That's down 3. Nebius down 2. Iren down 3. What about shorting Quantum? I don't think you can easily short Quantum if the United States starts to really become a... yeah, the Quantum valuations are probably a bit aggressive as well, but does that justify an easy short on it? Microsoft, are we still holding 440? Yes, we are still holding $440. Oh my goodness. I'm just looking at this right now. You're right. ARM does have a 400 PE. Oh, I was only looking at their sales ratio. I wasn't even looking at earnings. They're trading at 284 times forward earnings. Yeah, okay. ARM is kind of stupid. I'm sorry. That valuation is aggressive. Having said that, is it a short? I don't know, because if you get a lot of these analysts thinking that CPU demand is going to go crazy and ARM keeps collecting all these royalties, I don't think the stock has to go down. But yeah, some of these valuations. But I also think that's why Zeta and Shopify and Reddit are getting some love, because the market might be finally saying, okay, we can't pay this much for ARM. What else can we buy? So maybe it's not a short, but maybe net new capital is not coming in. Meta's getting hit right there, 626. Corning down about 3%. AMD, that turned red, and then CoreWeave. That's down 1. SoFi just went back below 18. SoFi almost below 18. S&P, are we down? S&P is getting a red candle. We're still up for the day. Pam Bondi testifies behind closed doors in the House Committee's Epstein probe. Dude, you know the thing we haven't talked about in 2 months? You know the thing we haven't talked about in 2 months? We kind of had a global war, and I think everyone forgot about the thing we were talking about in January. But yeah, that thing has not been a topic of discussion. She's not the attorney general anymore, though. So I guess we're going to get some more updates on how that testimony goes. Shopify right there, 115.40. Mate, I just sold a covered call on Palantir, 190 June 26th. I got a $1.12 premium. What do you think? I think that's very reasonable. I do not think Palantir will be $190 by June 26th. I think that's super reasonable. Now, if it is, I think you'll easily be able to roll it, but I also think that's just asking for a lot in a month. That would be basically back to all-time highs. I would be happy if we can just chill out. Forget even in the 150s, bro. If we can chill out in the 140s, I'd be happy at this point. But if we can chill out in the 150s, that's good enough. So super OTM, short time frame. That's usually the way to do calls. And usually sell them on days like this where you're super green and you're getting a lot more premium. Qualcomm getting hit from 259. All right, so now you're seeing a lot more red candles coming in as that's starting to go more green. When do you think Trump, don't you think if Trump liked the deal, he would have already announced it? Yes, and there was reports last night that said Trump is not announcing it because the Ayatollah is not officially on board with the deal. So that's part of the reason that Trump has not said, yes, I'm a fan of it. But, you know, there are some questions in this deal that have not been answered, like uranium enrichment, which quite frankly, I don't know when it's going to be answered, but at least they have agreed to open the strait. And then whatever ends up happening with the uranium enrichment is going to be a political conversation, not an economic conversation anymore. But hopefully the strait opens up. All right, a little bit of a sell-off here going into the 10:30 part of the day. Very reasonable given how much green we've seen. It'll be very interesting to see by the end of the day if we reverse or if we can at least close at some new levels on these names that haven't hit these levels in a couple months. But you are seeing some red. ASTS is getting wrecked. I didn't know that launch on Blue Origin was that bad for ASTS, but 20% down as that's getting hit. So this is aggressive. Paul, thank you for the super chat. Here's a good one for you. Reddit made $800 million in net profit TTM. ARM did $900 million in net profit TTM, and ARM is 13 times the valuation. It's a hell of a point. Reddit's trading at $30 billion, basically doing the same profit as ARM. ARM is trading at $370 billion. Now, again, you can ignore it and say, well, CPU and growth, but hold on, Reddit's growing 70%. And don't tell me that the advertising growth is that different than the CPU growth, because quite frankly, advertising has a lot more of a runway than CPU growth, if we're just being honest about it. Number two, I would imagine Reddit has way better margins than ARM. I can't confirm, someone can confirm in the chat, but I'm pretty sure Reddit has better margins than ARM because it's software versus hardware. So is it worth paying 13 times the valuation on ARM for the narrative? Maybe, but maybe not. And maybe that's why some of the money is coming into some of those other sectors. That doesn't mean ARM's a short, but maybe ARM's not a buy at these levels. ARM's float is also locked up. That's also fair. And that's how SoftBank is manufacturing a lot of the squeeze. Lumentum's down 4. Photonics taking a breather. There's no bad headline on the Photonics stocks. If anything, I've only seen really good headlines for Photonics. So again, Lumentum, it's up triple digits year to date. Same with Coherent. Same with AAOI. So if we see a breather on them. The thing is, if the semi stocks fall 10% and the software stocks go up 10%, you can't fully say it's a rotation because the semi stocks will still be up a lot year to date. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe there's some rotation happening into software, but you can't say the semis are dead. Like if ARM goes from 348 to 290, ARM was at $100 in the beginning of the year. That would be a natural thing. But obviously, if you bought ARM at 350, you'd be upset. Or if you bought Lumentum at $1,000, you'd be upset. And so it's not crazy to see some of that rotation. ServiceNow still holding 120 on the day. Where's Keel? Keel's at 539. That's down 4%. Cypher is also down 6.67%. I'm loading up on JPM. You know, the financials have not participated maybe the financials are your kind of deep value play right now in this market. They're going to make a lot of money off M&As, make a lot of money off IPOs. If rates come down, their AOCI losses on the balance sheet are going to come down as well. Right now, they collectively have a couple $100 billion of paper losses. Every 25 bips helps a lot with their tangible book value going up. So maybe the banks end up being a decent spot right here. Micron 969. So the rally stopped at around 975, got rejected. And now at 970. Microsoft still 440. As that continues to go green. Have you looked at InnoData? Yes, they had a massive earnings. Haven't done super deep due diligence on them, but 3 weeks ago they had a huge earnings, and that's why that stock blew up. Also, it's very small market cap. Amcor, again, right? Amcor down 1%. It's like, who cares? This thing was up 15% last week. It's up 40% on the year. Like a lot of these names, I'm not going to have any sympathy for. I don't know if you guys will. I am going to have zero sympathy if these names take a breather, because they have been up and to the right. Like if Rocket Lab goes back to 120, I don't have any sympathy. I'm sorry. I love Rocket Lab. I own Rocket Lab, but I'm also realistic about Rocket Lab. ASTS going back to 100, like, yeah, it sucks, but it's also up from 65. Micron, if that falls back to 800, which I don't think it's going to happen, but let's say it, like, there's just no sympathy to have. These stocks are up. And if you bought these stocks at their highs, there's really no sympathy, because then you better DCA and believe in the semiconductor thesis playing out, because you just can't be upset when a name that's up 9x in a year takes a 20% haircut. By the way, watch what they do, not what they say. Our boy Brad Gerstner, that was supposed to have this podcast with the Micron CEO. I don't know when this podcast is happening. I haven't seen it yet. Did anyone see what he said last night on CNBC? Because I did. And he said in a, I guess, more politically correct way that, he probably is downsizing some of his exposure to some of the biggest names that have gone parabolic.
Companies that we own, like Databricks, and year to date, Snowflake is up 10%, like Micron, which is up 200% year to date, or ARM, which is up 200% year to date. So for our investors, for our shareholders, that was the right thing for us to do, even though today is an absolute spectacular, well-deserved blockbuster day for Snowflake.
So a couple things. So you're not taking any profits, for example, in the Micron, given the crazy move that we've even seen since we last spoke, just as you said 2 weeks ago. Let me deal with that first, and I have another question about Snow and Databricks.
Right. Yeah. So yes, we are actively managing our portfolio, Scott. I can't give you every tick and trade, but I will say with these parabolic moves, we absolutely are making sure that we're taking down some of our exposure.
I can't give you every tick and trade, but we are, quote, actively managing our portfolio and taking down some exposure, AKA we are selling the names that are going parabolic. That doesn't mean he's getting rid of the whole position. That doesn't mean he's turning into a bear, but that does mean he needs someone to buy his Micron at 950. And maybe there's someone that gladly will buy because they think it's going to 1500. But the point is, he's taken profits. And you just can't be too surprised if active money managers take profits on the names that have gone parabolic, because that's what they have to do. The point is, or the question is, who's buying what they're buying? And is it still going to go up, or are they going to be left holding the bag? And time will tell going into the summer with some of these tech stocks.
Names that exceed our price targets, rotating it into other names. But remember, on the All In Pod, we have this phrase, let your winners run. So a key in this business is that you got to let the best companies continue to compound. You've heard me say it on this show before, a simple heuristic.
So look, my point is, Gerstner's awesome, but 3 weeks ago, he's on CNBC saying Micron's the next best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to do a podcast with the CEO. It's amazing. We need all this memory. Stock goes up, and what does he do? He sells. So you just got to, these people are not diamond handing some of these names the way that people think they're diamond handing them, because they have to actively manage a portfolio. And when you have such a vertical parabolic move, the responsible thing for them to do is take profits. And I think the scary thing is, well, who's buying it? Because if it's retail investors that are using leverage to buy it at certain levels that are just not that achievable in the short term to get above, remember, you buy a stock like Micron at 950 on leverage and it goes down 10, 15%, which would be super reasonable because it's up 4x on the year. 10, 15% is nothing crazy. You might get liquidated. You might get margin called. So maybe Micron then goes up 15% the next day, but because you don't have the liquidity, you don't have the solvency to be able to hold on to those shares, you get margin called. And I think that's the scarier part of some of the stuff going on in the market, even if the fundamentals are really strong with some of these companies, which is why I think finally some of these other names are getting a rotation, because there's just not enough buyers to keep buying all these names at these astronomical levels. Now, that doesn't mean you get rid of the whole position, because I'm sure he's not liquidating the entire Micron stake. By the way, Brad Gerstner also sold a ton of Hood last year. He went in with a lot of Hood. He downsized his position by almost 75%, which was the responsible thing to do. And it made sense because Hood ended up going down. But someone bought those Hood shares at 140. Someone's buying these Micron shares at 970, and maybe they're going up. It's not crazy to see them potentially go down. And I think that's what we might be seeing in terms of the rotation. Dell right there, still up 30%. Dell was at 450 in the pre-market. It's at 411. So again, even Dell taking a breather here, still 30%. Nothing to be scared about with this move, but it is down from those highs. Nebius getting it. Wow, hold on. That's a pretty big drop on Nebius. 7% down. Iren, 5% down. Iren losing most of the pump from this week. And then where's CoreWeave? CoreWeave down 3% as well. Interesting. CrowdStrike's up 5%, even after some really crappy cybersecurity earnings this week, which means the market's thinking that CrowdStrike's going to be the real deal when they put up earnings next week. If they're not, the stock went from 300 to 700. So this has been one of the more silent SaaS names that has crushed it. They're going to have to put up some really, really strong earnings. Yeah, same thing as Bloom. Again, Bloom will probably be a much larger company in the coming years. It is all a question of when you feel comfortable taking a position in it. And even with all the analyst upgrades, at some point, if there's not an incremental buyer, just like Dell at 150 today, there wasn't another incremental buyer. That's why the stock's not at, 450 anymore. Doesn't mean it won't be 450 a year from now. But again, it comes back down to stomaching the volatility if you get into a name that's high flying, and then dealing with, the potential drawdown on that name. Quantinium IPO is said to be double digits oversubscribed. Okay, so this is a big quantum IPO, spinoff from Honeywell. I've really not looked into this company at all. I don't even know what the valuation is. Cactus, if you can find the valuation, you can let us know. I think it's in the couple of billions range. But that's going to be happening next week. Is Bitcoin getting hit? Bitcoin is getting hit. 72.6. I don't think we full on have a bull market without Bitcoin. I don't know when it comes back, but I am uncomfortable thinking we have this massive bull run and Bitcoin does nothing in it. So hopefully we see some more. Why is Nebius dropping? Honestly, I don't know. They had a big catalyst this week with the Leopold news. 12.7 billion valuation for Quantinium. Okay, Cactus, can you get us the revenue? I'm curious how much revenue they're doing. Amid Bitcoin is useless and stupid. Steve and I, we got into a little debate about it on Basis Points. It'll be posted later today. It's the first time we talked about crypto on the pod. I don't think Bitcoin is useless. Obviously, I don't think people are using it for stable coins and transaction stuff, but I think as a store of value, and I know it sounds idiotic to say this because it hasn't stored value through the war and through inflation and all this stuff, and it's down so much year to date. But I still believe if we keep printing money, there's going to be demand for an asset that is a hedge towards that. And I think that's the simple thesis to buy Bitcoin. But yeah, in the short term, obviously, it's not going to have free cash flows or anything like that. Per the New York Times, U.S.-Iran peace deal reportedly includes $300 billion in reconstruction fund for Iran. They might end up doing the same thing with Ukraine. Ukraine had a $40 billion reconstruction fund in 2024. Palantir was included in that fund with BlackRock. So if that's the case, you might have a lot of companies getting contracts to help rebuild Iran, as that peace deal would give out a lot of that government money to some of these different companies. The company Quantinium reported a net loss of $192 million on $30 million of revenue. Okay, so they're going public at $12 billion with $30 million of revenue. Okay, that is, I don't know how the IPO is going to do, but fundamentally, I really don't like that. That's not something to get super excited about, but it's quantum. And there probably is something a lot deeper to the story that I don't know about outside of the numbers. So when that IPO happens next week, we will take a look at that. Palantir, are we still running? We are still running. This is a big move, guys. This was 132 last week. It was 137 yesterday. This is a pretty freaking big move on Mr. Palantir right now. 9%, dude. We haven't had a 9% day in a long time. Can you show the heat map? Yeah, let's look at the heat map. We are actually red in a lot of places outside of semis and software, and some of the software names are starting to go, or some of the semi names starting to go a bit red. All your consumer defensives are down. Your communication services are down. Your industrials are down. But your tech and software is still up. Oh, yeah. Let me check the stock draft. Let's check that. Okay. Matt's still at 70%. I do have Hood and Palantir in that stock draft. So they're helping out today. We're at 64. Steve's at 59. Tanner's at 15. Chris is at 30. The only way I somehow beat Matt is if the SpaceX IPO goes wrong and Rocket Lab and ASTS get hit pretty hard. I just have to kind of stay steady. He has to get hit. But if that doesn't happen, then he's going to run away with this. And SoFi. He has SoFi as well, which is moving now. So we're going to have to wait and see. It's going to end on June 16th. Wow, 157. I think, you know what I think is happening? I think the street, or not the street, maybe it's just retail. I saw a lot of chatter last night about what's the next stock that Trump said to buy. And a lot of people on X were tweeting that, well, he did say to buy Palantir. And Palantir is obviously down year to date. So I think that might be the catalyst for why a bunch of people are just saying, okay, Intel, Dell, Palantir. Or it could just be the software thing re-rating. But whatever the reason is, we've been waiting for it. And it's happening. Bloom, that's down 6. Meta still not catching a bid either. So this one getting hit right here. But still at least up from where it was on Friday last week. Dude, I don't think you bet against Zucks. I think Meta, it's going to come around. It's really testing people's patience. I get it. It's an amazing company. But do we really see a world in a couple of years from now where Meta's stuck and it hasn't made a move, like with their earnings growth? Like, I understand all the bear cases. Zucks is spending too much, yada, but at the end of the day, they're growing profitably. And they trade at 17 times forward. I mean, you know, people were saying Microsoft was dead a couple weeks ago. Microsoft's not dead anymore. So maybe the whole Meta debt thing ends up becoming Meta at 650 and people wishing they bought more at 620. Broadcom right there, 439. SanDisk at 1676. Path also just flipped green. ServiceNow, baby. Unstoppable. 123. I think this is the best day ServiceNow has had in a year and a half. 13%. Palantir and ServiceNow, both double-digit days. Dell back to 30%. CrowdStrike as well. Up 7%. Not bad. Not bad at all. Service currently right now Making a move. Don Bin, thank you for the super chat. Happy Pouncer Day. Another day to share them profits. It's just nice for other companies to participate finally. Like, because all of us are not all in on Micron, you know, or Bloom or AMD. Now, a lot of you guys have AMD, but the point is, like, you know, if all of us together here were all in those 3 stocks, like this year would have been amazing. But most of us have NVIDIA. Most of us have software allocation. Most of us have fintech. And yeah, we've got semis, but most of us don't have these $340 million companies that sell the picks and shovels to the picks and shovels to the picks and shovels to be included inside of one component of a GPU that somehow 5x's after someone tweets about it. Like, most of us don't own that shit. And so it's nice to see the market come around to a lot of other stuff. So far, are we still at 17? Back to 18. Back to 18 there. Wow, CRM also up 8%. Look at that, 190. Okay, so delayed reaction on those earnings, but there you go, up 8%. As Pilly is going for 158. Dell right there, still up 30. Nebius down 5. CoreWeave down 3. June said, I'm not refreshing my account right now. This is a down day for me and I'm ignoring it. Yeah, but June, you've had a massive run with Rocket Lab, right? So it's one of those things where, look, if you own like 10,000 shares of Rocket Lab and it goes from 150 to 136, 150 minus 136 is 14. 14 times 10,000 is 140,000. My mom was a math teacher, by the way. Anyway, so your account is down 140,000 today. But if you have 10,000 shares of Rocket Lab, and it went from 70 to 136. 136 minus 70 is 66. 66 times 10,000 is 660,000. So even if you're down 140,000 on the day, you're up 660,000 in the past month since May 8th. My mom was a math teacher, by the way, just letting people know. So it's one of those things where it's like, you got to just be happy that the stock has made a move, even if the stock is down from before, you know, and that's for all of us that are seeing some of these gains. Did you guys know my mom was a math teacher? I'm like not that bad at math, to be honest. Like, I'm really not. Like, I know I'm in this creative career of communication and shit, but if I wanted to be like a physicist or some shit, if I really wanted to be like a math PhD, like I could have done it, you know. Just because I got a C in calculus twice doesn't mean I wouldn't have been able to do linear algebra. So the math is mathing. Shame she wasn't an English teacher. Communications majors be like, dude, my major was basically communications. You guys know I took a class called it was called public speaking. It was a public speaking class my senior year, and I got a C. I got a C in public speaking. That's when I knew school is a joke. That's when I knew school is a joke. I was like, hold on. I'm getting a C in public speaking. I was like, okay, this is kind of stupid. But that was the last class I had to do to fulfill my business management major. It's the dumbest major on the planet. But I think it's worse than communication. At least in communications, you're learning something more fundamental. Business management is like, oh, here's servant leadership. It's like, that's not going to teach you how to be a leader. That's not going to help. But the point is, yeah, if I wanted to be a math PhD, I could have done it. I could have done it. That's crazy though, right? A C for me in public speaking? It's probably because I didn't show up to class. Honestly, that's part of the reason. Write it right there, 170.4. But I remember the final presentation I did. It's pretty good public speech, in my opinion. Did you say currently right now? Yes, that's probably why. That's probably why. Okay, what else? What else is happening? What else happened? We don't have any other macro news. We had PMI. Again, we're seeing a little rotation this morning, but the semis are still holding up, a decent chunk of them. We're still seeing some decent grade. By the way, I'm kidding about math. Like, I am so bad academically at math. Like, I can do like multiplication. I can do like 10,000 times 5, but like, you know, y equals mx plus cb or whatever. Like, that shit, I start fading away. So the math stuff probably wouldn't have worked out. Don't worry, Mitt. We knew you were joking. Okay, that's mean. Okay, that's freaking mean. That is mean. XT, thanks for the super chat. Should we be buying compute then? Because Donnie bought it. If you mean compute, if you mean like stocks that are associated with compute, I mean, those are semiconductor stocks, right? So yeah, look, but Donnie T also bought ServiceNow. He also bought Salesforce. He bought a lot of stocks in March. He sold a lot of stocks in February. If you go through that document that was disclosed 2 weeks ago, and he bought a lot in March. So he's long a lot of stuff, which is kind of why I think it was inevitable that the ServiceNows and the Salesforces would hopefully come back. How does the show feel like 30 minutes, but the market opens and all of a sudden it's 11 a.m.? Yeah, it's every day. It's kind of crazy when that happens. Lilly, yep, he bought Lilly as well. Lilly's at $1 trillion. Lilly at 1103 right now. Dell starting to get a little sold off here. $5 away from losing 400. So obviously the buyers have got pretty exhausted. Still up a lot for the day, 28%, but potentially coming down. Is your mom proud of your math? My mom is really happy that I chose a life path that was based on my own intuition and ambition, because my mom wanted to do a lot of creative stuff when she was younger, and her dad didn't really let her because her dad, was more conservative. She was in India. Like, girls weren't able to just go pursue their own ambitions and stuff. So she really had this philosophy of just letting me do whatever I wanted to do. And it's been a long and bumpy journey, and, failed at a lot of stuff, but ultimately you kind of keep grinding and figure stuff out and do it. But I think there's a part of her that her heart breaks when when she realizes I suck at math. Like, there was this, we were on the couch a couple weeks ago, and there was some math thing that came up, and she asked me like this percentage of something, and I said a number, and she just put her hand on her head, and she was like, why are you so bad at this? And I was like, this is your fault. You're the math teacher. You didn't teach me well enough. But no, she's happy that I'm doing my own thing. Pound right there, 156.20. As that continues to hold green. Okay, SPY potentially going red right here, folks. We got 60 cents before it goes down. And then the Q's also very close to going down. There's my uncle in the chat. Look at him. Your uncle also had a tough life in India. See, talk about someone who's good at math. My uncle understands math. He's a CPA, I think. I'm pretty sure he's a CPA, right? He's an accountant. His job is, well, now he's more in management, but his job was heavily rooted in accounting and math. And he had to take a lot of freaking tests in the 1990s to get his certificates. I would have failed all of those. Like, dude, I got like a C+ in managerial accounting in college. And the only reason I got the C+, I don't even want to tell the story, but I had to really fight for that C+. So I was more creative. I wanted to talk. I wanted to sing. I wanted to dance. And then I realized I couldn't sing and dance. So I just kept talking. So that's how college played out for me. But, if you're good at the math stuff, that's definitely a advantage. All right. Indices are falling. Palantir is not getting hit too hard. Neither is Salesforce. Neither is SoFi. Neither is Microsoft. Microsoft's actually hitting the highs of the day. So you're not really seeing the software names get wrecked. You are seeing the space names getting destroyed. ASTS down 20, and you are seeing the semis start to have a little bit more weakness. ServiceNow still at 121.50. Degree in professional yapping. Yes, exactly. All your photonics names, those are getting hit. Lumentum, that's down 3. Again, not that crazy. The drone stocks were up 30% yesterday. They're down 10 to 15% today. Not that crazy. Cerebras down 4. This thing should have never been worth 350, but nonetheless, that's down as well. Corning down 4. Path down 1. Mongo flipped. That's kind of weird. Mongo was holding on. That one's red. Did NVIDIA flip? NVIDIA had to flip. NVIDIA is very close to flipping. Here's going to be the interesting part about this market now, okay? Who's going to buy the Dell dip if it goes back to 395? Because everyone's excited when it rips your face off and it's like, okay, this thing can never come down. Then it comes down. And then people have to ask themselves, am I really going to buy something that's up 4x on a $50 dip from a level that it hit in the pre-market that it probably shouldn't have hit because of mass euphoria? And maybe in this market, that's what happens, but maybe it doesn't. And then you start getting people panic selling because they bought it at 420 and now it's at 380 and they're like, shit, this thing is not worth $380 a share. And then you have all the sell side analysts that upgraded it to $700 today thinking, oh, we just told everybody to buy it. And guess what? Maybe it shouldn't trade at double the historical multiple. Is there a reason for why it should? Yes. But is there also a reason why the market's not going to pay that? Yeah. And that's what makes a market. But it's going to be very interesting to see who steps in and buys the dip. Micron at 650 last week, people bought the dip. They stepped in. 954. I mean, at what point do people buy the dip on this now? How low does it have to go to get people excited? I think these are the questions we're going to have to look at going into next week. Amit, did you acquire your portfolio through YouTube revenue or inheritance? Okay, so I don't know what you mean by inheritance. My parents really don't have the money to give me, so there's been no inheritance ever. No, I built my portfolio through building my portfolio. My parents have been awesome. They let me stay in their house rent-free for the past 5 years. I moved out this year, right? My parents have given me the world, but in terms of giving me a check, like, no. Like, my parents don't have anything to give. You know, they're first-generation immigrants. They just started learning how to invest. My dad has a house that, you know, is his one rental property, but no, we don't have inheritance. And honestly, I don't want an inheritance. I want to fucking build this shit on my own. It's kind of a pride thing, but I don't know. I just want to keep building. Feels more fun. You go, and the drawdowns are more reasonable to handle because, like, remember that guy on Reddit? His grandma gave him $880,000 and he put it into Intel, and then it fell to like 200,000. Now he's doing well if he held it. But imagine losing your grandma's inheritance by 70%. Like, that's not fun, bro. That shit's not fun. So doing it yourself is also more encouraging. But yeah, parents did a lot for me. It's just they don't have actual money to give me. And I would never ask for money. Nokia taking a dip right here. 1450 down 5. Okay, let's see if we get to 13, baby. Give us the dip. Give us a real dip right here. Again, the insiders have been buying this thing from 1550 to 1599. Did that guy hold it? I think there was a Reddit post from, if anyone has it, Cactus, if you could find, there was a Reddit post of him updating that he did hold the position. If anyone has it, you can send it. But I'm pretty sure I read that he did hold it. It was like 3 weeks ago, though, so I don't know if for sure that he held it, but yeah, I think the guy did hold. The guy, by the way, had a real thesis on Intel. So to be honest, I think it made sense that it's believable to say that he held it because he had like a real thesis he outlined on Intel. He basically called it the TSMC of America. That was his thesis back when the stock was $30. And that literally became the thesis. It was fake. He deleted the post. Yeah, see, this is why I don't know. I don't know if it was legit or not, but if he did hold it, then it ended up holding out and going green. ETH is ETHing again. Is it down? ETH is down below 2,000. ServiceNow still up 11%. Is Fastly getting hit? This one is also SaaS. This one's actually making a little move today. So this one is CDN, which is more contingent on data centers and agents, but they also do sell software. So that one getting a little bit of love. It was at 16 yesterday, NVIDIA. 215 right here. Do we think ASTS has bottomed out? I don't know. 18% feels kind of ridiculous. So hopefully it has. What do you think of Tom Lee's thesis that the market's going to fall? I don't know, guys. I am struggling because, like, he is so adamant that we are going to get a bear market. And I'm just like, you know, it might be an ego thing for him to come out and, like, you know, a lot of these guys, right, they have egos, right? Everyone has an ego. And when you're that public in media and you've said 7,300 is the top and then we go to 7,600, Sometimes you don't want to admit you're wrong. But then again, is he going to be right? Would it be crazy if we go back to 7,000? No, it would not be crazy. It would be routine. It would suck, but it wouldn't be crazy. But he's calling for, 6,000. And I'm like, hold on. That sounds a little crazy now. That's a little aggressive. It's because of midterms. Yeah, but midterms in and of themselves are a historical precedent for why the markets goes down. They don't have to be a one-to-one correlation to the markets definitively going down, right? And I think that's the that's kind of the concern here. It's like, just because it's a midterm year, does it have to go down? Now, granted, again, every midterm year we've had that correction. We did have a correction, by the way, in March. It just wasn't as aggressive as the historical midterm year corrections, but we're going to have to see. Meta's ripping, is it? Oh my goodness. What's the news? No, it's not ripping. Why'd you guys say it was ripping? It's at 625. Who said it was ripping, bro? Or is Webull not updating it? Where's the rip? Where's the freaking rip? What are you talking about? You guys don't see it on Webull, right? Oh, is Webull messing up? Or are you trolling? Bro, if you guys are trolling, oh my gosh, bro. Where? There is no rip, bro. It went from 624.50 to 625.30. It's not Webull. Trump did tweet, though, so you do have that. Why do you guys have to do this, bro? Why can't you guys be nice? Like, why can't people just be nice? All right, Trump. Iran must agree that they will never have a nuclear weapon or bomb. The Hormuz Strait must be immediately opened, no tolls for unrestricted shipping traffic in both directions. All water mines, if any, will be terminated. We have removed through detonation numerous such mines with our great underwater minesweepers. Iran will complete the immediate removal and or detonation of any mines that are left, which will not be many. Ships caught in the strait due to our amazing and unprecedented naval blockade, which will now be lifted, may start the process of heading home. Say hello to your wives, husbands, parents, and families for me, your favorite president. The enriched material, sometimes referred to as nuclear dust, which is buried deep underground with virtually collapsed mountains caused by our powerful B-2 bomber attacks 11 months ago sitting on top of it, will be unearthed by the United States, which it is agreed to only the country, along with China, the mechanical capability of doing so, in close coordination in conjunction with Iran, plus the International Atomic Energy Agency, and destroyed. No money will be exchanged until further notice. Other items of far less importance have been agreed to. I will be meeting now in the Situation Room to make a final determination. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay. None of that helped Meta. But I don't really know what he's saying here. Basically, he's saying he's going to make a determination soon, and that he wants the nuclear weapons and the uranium enrichment to be included in the agreement, which was already talked about yesterday. I think he's formally announcing that the blockade is going to end, which was also announced yesterday, which would consequently open up the Strait of Hormuz. So theoretically, the market should like this, even if there is a little bit of, there's the green candle right there on the SP, even if there's a little bit of uncertainty around uranium enrichment, which is probably going to last for a while. But, I mean, I think this is bullish. Where's oil? Oil still at 88. Oil not really dropping too much. I don't know. I mean, he's kind of confirming what Axios said yesterday. That's how I'm reading this. Because the fact that he's not mentioning that Iran has definitively agreed to give up their nuclear weapons, the fact that he's not like formally saying that, probably means that that's still in negotiation, which is literally what Axios reported yesterday. And so, yeah, it might be priced in as well. Shopify right there, 117, highs of day for Shopify. ASTS getting a little bounce. I mean, everything's getting a little bounce. Micron, little bounce. NVIDIA, little bounce. Ondas, little bounce. Dell almost went below 400. It was at 402. Trump tweeted. Now it's at 409. So it definitely is creating a bounce right there. Even Rocket Lab, 134 to 139, right? ServiceNow still up. SoFi, 1750 or 1784 to 1812. Maybe not horrible. But yeah, I still think we're trying to figure out what's going on with the nuclear weapons. Okay, Symbotic is down. There was big insider selling in Symbotic. This is a smaller company. I mean, it's not that small of a company, but maybe the insider selling is affecting it today. This is it's in a hot theme, robotics. So, obviously there will be insiders that take profits here and there, but this one is in the bucket of stocks that the market cares about when it comes to robots. It hasn't had the best year. Over the past year, it is up 60%. This year, it's down 30%. But it's down 5 right there on the day. Oracle, is that green? 2. Wow, Oracle 220. Look at that. This thing was 135 on April 13th. Absolute rebound on a software business and data center business. Dude, you guys really said Meta was ripping. I got so excited. I was like, yes, we got fintech, we got software, we got Microsoft, now we got Meta. You guys trolled me so hard, bro. So hard. And then I don't think the rest of you guys even knew it was a troll. You just started repeating the comments from other people. And then I said it. And then I was like, oh, it has to be ripping if 15 people are saying it's ripping. Or are 15 of you in a group chat and are coordinating how to troll? Because that was a hell of a troll, dude. A hell of a troll. Matt says he's adding more to Symbotic. I've got to do some due diligence on this one. I am starting, so I said this on my Substack last week, but I am starting to go down the rabbit hole for the supply chain on humanoid robots, in particular, the companies making actuators. I've already looked at 10 of them. The problem is they're all in China, and it's hard to invest in them. So I'm trying to find American companies that make actuators. Now, some of you guys might say some of the large caps that don't specialize in actuators, but they make them. But that's not where the alpha is, right? It's like your GEs of the world. Like, yeah, they play a role in making actuators, but I'm trying to look for that pure play company. Like, what's the Micron of humanoid robotics, And so I'm trying to dive deep and find them. Symbotic obviously is a totally different company. But yeah, I don't know if we talked about it yesterday, but Figure just landed a new deal with Macy's. Macy's does $9 billion of revenue per year, and they're letting Macy's, JCPenney, Aeropostale, they're letting Figure bring the robots into the warehouse. Like, you start getting more of these deals, you're going to see a lot more robots in the commercial warehouses, and that should start bringing a lot more demand for their supply chain. And maybe we can find some different products that are going to be important for that. Symbotic 46, Meta 625, ASTS down 17, Shop almost 118, Micron still 964. Synaptics, that's actually a really important one. Yes. Stock Talk talked about this a few weeks ago. This is actually a very important one that's in the supply chain for robots. BlackBerry also, there's a thematic there. I wouldn't say it's necessarily supply chain. It's a little bit more software with QNX, but there's a lot of names for robots. And I'm going to try to distill the ones that I think make the most sense outside of Tesla and Amazon, obviously. But ISRG isn't really this is robotic surgery. Like, it's cool, $150 billion market cap, but this is not something that could 10x, because humanoid robots 10x. Or maybe it can, I don't know. But I'm looking for much smaller companies that are going to be important for this. The risk, though, is, do humanoid robots actually, we have theoretically tens of millions of GPUs on our way to hundreds of millions of GPUs. Are we going to have billions of robots? Like, I believe that's going to happen, but I also don't have enough proof to say it's definitely going to happen. And if that doesn't happen, you're not going to have that much demand in the supply chain. So we have to see if that floats. Yeah, OUST, they actually got an upgrade today, Ouster, by JP Morgan at 75. I have briefly looked at this. I've not really looked at it. I know a bunch of retail investors have looked at this name for the past 2 months. It's done well, I think from 27 to 44. The sell side is starting to catch on, but this is definitely on the list. Rockwell Automation, that came up on my list as well. It's just, some of these names they do a lot of stuff. They're not necessarily pure plays. Costco and Walmart. Well, Costco's probably going to be selling the robots, so maybe that helps. Costco had a good earnings, by the way, yesterday. Stock's down 4%, but relatively decent earnings. By the way, this is the update on the SpaceX valuation thing. Let's see what the headline was from last night.
Scoop, by the way, revealing that SpaceX has lowered its valuation target to at least $1.8 trillion. Elon Musk's company seeking to raise as much as $75 billion, which, of course, would make it the biggest IPO of all time. Let's bring in Matt Bloxham then from Bloomberg Intelligence. Matt, is this a negative signal, or is this a kind of usual run up to an IPO? You have the adjustments, you get the feedback, and maybe you adjust lower, but doesn't necessarily tell you a negative story, or does it?
Yeah, no, I think it's more that, they're kind of bouncing back feedback from key stakeholders. It's a bit of a game of cat and mouse, isn't it, an IPO? You want to maximize the valuation for the selling company, but also you want to leave a little bit on the table for buying investors so that when it lists, you get a bit of a pop, everybody's happy. And, how far between those two kind of benchmarks you stray is kind of the art of being a banker, I think, on an IPO. And also, they haven't even started the roadshow yet, so I think that's going to start next week. Potentially, if that goes down well, then you could see that valuation kind of move back up towards the kind of 2 billion mark.
Yeah, it will be the largest IPO in history. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So even if the valuation's down by like 100 billion, it's still a massive valuation. And if it supersedes 1.8 trillion, then it's still going to be much higher than 2 trillion. Here's the update on Dell from last night.
Our Christina Partsinevelos has details. Morning, Christina.
Good morning. Well, Dell shares are up, over 30% because Wall Street just got this stock wrong. Wall Street was essentially looking for $35 billion in revenue. Dell did $44 billion in the quarter. On earnings per share, consensus was about near $3. Dell came in just under $5. That kind of miss by the entire analyst community really forces a reset and why we're seeing the stock soar so much today. Previously, Wall Street thought that AI demand had been pulled forward and the cycle is maturing. So back to normal for Dell. This quarter completely dismantled that theory. The AI server backlog grew again to more than $51 billion, and traditional servers, which is, you can say, almost the boring part of the business, were up 92% year over year, driven by enterprises building out for agentic AI workloads. Dell's COO said customer conversations are now multi-year in nature, think 3, 4, 5 years, something we've heard from memory executives as well, but not necessarily from the AI hardware side. That's not pull forward demand. Morgan Stanley said it flat out in a note that they got Dell wrong and put its rating under review. Jordan Klein at Mizuho, another one, is comparing this to NVIDIA's blowout quarter back in May 2023, the quarter that convinced Wall Street that the AI revolution was real. He's calling Dell's this quarter, a game changer for investors, confidence in the size as well as the scale of AI spending, and says the trade has real legs well into 2027 as well as into 2028. There's also another layer here too. Dell CEO flagged some serious shortages in memory chips, which we know about, processors, CPUs specifically, and hard drives, with lead times stretching to at least a year, which bodes well for names like Intel, AMD, ARM. And also good news for the likes of Micron. And that's why you're seeing so many of these names higher. HPE, another competitor, up about 14%. Supermicro up the same amount. And the AI demand story was really supposed to be slowing, and Dell just spent a whole earnings call proving the opposite, and the rest of the sector is repricing it in real time, which is why you saw such a stock move post earnings call, guys.
And one of the other surprises was the traditional server revenue up 92%. It was like double what analysts are expecting there. What's the story, and is that sustainable as well?
Well, so that is the whole argument that agentic AI is seeping into other sectors of the server base. So you have CPUs, and I even called it the boring part of the data center. That's the CPUs that do all of the calculations, orchestrate everything, and those are within the traditional servers for Dell. And so that's why you did see it up 92%. The big question is this going to be sustainable? Some analysts think so, which is why you saw the re-rating price targets going from $168 to $500, $700 for Susquehanna. But overall, it seems like people have shifted their sentiment. It's just I would say more a question of valuation now. Is Dell treated as just an AI hardware firm, and compared to the likes of Supermicro, for example, where its forward PE is literally double Supermicro, or is Dell now an AI player, given the backlog and all of its AI servers, et cetera, and the relationship it has with NVIDIA? So that's still, I feel like, an unanswered question.
Okay, thank you, Christina. We'll ponder that with Dell shares up 30%.
All right, that is your story on Dell making the move. Robinhood starting to come back a bit. I don't know, guys. I think 90 potentially is on deck. I think 90 is on deck. Let me check resistance. Meta 626. Palantir 157. Yeah, Palantir is going for 158. Robinhood 90 resistance is 59,000 shares. That is not a lot. Reddit, Hood, Palantir, Reddit 173, Hood almost 90, Palantir almost 160, Shopify 119, S&P still holding green, Micron still making a move. Bloom is getting a little hit today, down 5, but it was at 268, so you're getting a rebound at 273. I mean, overall, it's a pretty green day for everything that has not performed over the past year or the past couple months, but even the names that are down today are taking a regular 5% haircut after moving a lot. So it seems like a pretty decent day for a broadening out effect, which is not too crazy. Snowflake as well. Oh yeah, there was the catalyst of the SEC potentially thinking of extending options to make them 24/7. That would be good for Hood theoretically, right? That could be another catalyst for why it's pumping, because you just have more trading volumes. So if you already have 24/5 trading, maybe you can have 24/5 options. And I mean, there's no reason market makers can't have liquidity pools for options at 9 p.m., right? And it gives people more flexibility to get in and out of it. I mean, imagine if Dell pumped and you could sell your calls last night versus having to sell them this morning when the stock was down 10% from the highs. So there's going to be more volume theoretically that goes to all these different platforms. It's actually good for IBK or Webull, all of them. And so that could also be a reason why it's getting moved. I ran right there, flipping green as well. I ran 60 to 64. As that also making a bigger move. Mid, have you made the robotic list of companies? No. I have 30 of them. I want to get it down to 10. So I think by hopefully next week that Substack is out. I will be traveling next week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I will not be in the studio. We will still have the market open on all 3 of those days. Actually, Wednesday, I will be in the studio. The flight is Wednesday afternoon. So Thursday, Friday, I won't be. But we won't have the market close on Thursday, Friday. So hopefully that Substack article is out next week. Wow, Microsoft also making a move, baby. 445 after Bill Gates sold 7 million shares of his position. I mean, it's kind of weird to see when he sold, but didn't matter. Microsoft 445. He didn't apply for any days off. I'm only taking 2 market closes off, not market opens. So we're going to still be able to keep that going. Walmart, are we red? Wow, dude, Walmart. Okay, this is healthy because Walmart was pushing what last month? 135, higher PE than Costco and a higher PE than NVIDIA and Meta still. Trades at 40 times. I mean, yeah, it's time to see it take a breather. Did it? Hoodie. I got to put my hood on right now. If you have a hood, put it on right now. If you have a hood, it is finally. When is the last? I don't remember the last time we saw a 9 handle, guys. Last time we saw a 9 handle, April 20th for a day. And the last time before that, February 10th. It has been 4 long months. And what makes this even better is that Bitcoin is down. It's not good for Bitcoin to be down, but the fact that Bitcoin's not rallying and Hood is, maybe the market is moving on from this stupid crypto association, which is kind of legit, to be fair, given the trading volumes, but it's not the whole story. It's never been the whole story. It's the whole story for MicroStrategy. It's the whole story for Coinbase. It is not the whole story for Robinhood. Hoodie. She's back. She's a little back right here. There you go. Freaking 90. It has been, now it's not stopping at 90. See, we all remember Hood last year. If you were on the train, you remember Hood last year. When she gets on that train, she doesn't stop. I'm still want to be a little conservative here because at the end of the day, Vlad's got to put up the earnings numbers. Last quarter, 15% growth. It just wasn't enough for the streets to get excited. But agentic trading, Trump accounts, pattern day trading rules going away. I mean, you do have catalysts here that should be able to theoretically re-rate the stock. What do you mean crypto's pumping? Yeah, but dude, crypto went from 72.50 to 73.6. Like, if Robinhood was actually being traded according to Bitcoin, Robinhood would be $72 right now, $74 bet, maybe $80 if you really want to be excited. It is completely broken out of that crypto. Wow, 90.40. She is not stopping. Not today. Not today. Yeah, we need Jose to buy Hood, bro, because it's a little weird that he bought SoFi and a week later SoFi breaks out. He was texting me yesterday. He's like, wait a second, Hood's up more. Why didn't you tell me to buy Hood? I'm like, dude, you've been watching me for years. But I think it's time we get Jose to buy some freaking Hood and take us to triple digits, dude. Yeah, Reddit, 5 months up, 173. Nebius was at 212. Nebius, look at that rebound, dude. That's pretty impressive. Back to 220. Steve also, I tried to convince Steve last night on the podcast to buy Hood. He still is not super excited about it. He's liked Hood for a while. He hated the valuation. But, I don't know if you can complain about valuation anymore. The stock's been dead for a year. It's down 50%. Like, at some point, you got to pull the trigger, right? At some point, you either like it or you don't. And so it's nice to see this finally getting some love right here. 90.5. This was 70 last week. Reddit 173. Microsoft 445. That one also breaking out. Iran 64. IGV back above 100. IGV is still down year to date. IGV, well, barely. It's down 3%. Okay, so yeah, now if you buy software, at least if you buy the index on IGV, you're not really getting the type of deal that you've had for the past 2 months. But then again, it was on sale for the past 2 months. So it's nice to see this coming back. Zeta right there, just below 22. SMCI also up 14%. However, if IGV is breaking out, then maybe buying into the strength on companies that are, Microsoft at 445, 25 times forward, not euphoric, right? Maybe you don't have to get the bottom. You can still get the breakout here. How much is Hood benefiting from the Trump accounts? So this is the part that's confusing. The Trump accounts are going to be really good for Hood, but for the long-term asset accumulation for Hood, it's going to matter. Getting 1 million accounts tomorrow is not really going to make a dent in any of their revenues, trading volumes, AUM, like it's $1,000 per account, and they're not going to have 1.5 million accounts. There's only 3 million accounts to go around. So it's not really a short-term catalyst, but I think it's at least differentiating the narrative, even if it doesn't affect the numbers, in terms of the eyes of the market. And what is the market? The market is just the perception of reality over reality itself. And the reality is Hood's earnings last quarter were not that great, but the perception of their future trajectory of growth is a lot better than their earnings last quarter. And I think that's why you're seeing it flip green right here. And then when Hood goes on a rally, again, it's monstrous. We've just seen this so many times. So question is now, can we hold? Look at Micron coming back up, 972. Is that one also making a much higher move right here? Matt says Steve hates making money. Well, Matt loves making money because Mr. Matt Money bought a nice 200 shares of Microsoft at 370. And I think he's very happy with that purchase. So you're seeing the software names catch a bid. You're seeing them catch a bid, and it's also fintech as well. SoFi right there. Look at that. SoFi 1845. Let's see if we can get that thing back up to 19, dude. A $19 close would be epic if we could get there. All right, guys. I think that is it for me. I'll be back on the market close, and we'll see if this stuff can continue. Ultimately, I think these are most of our headlines. We don't have anything too crazy. That Trump tweet got the market, I think, to get a little bit more excited. Someone just bought 3 million of Hood calls for 7/17, July 17th, $105 strike. Okay, so the option flow now coming into Hood as well. Our girl Caitlin from the New York Post, she just tweeted, "For months of this process, I've resisted temptations to say a deal is close, as many of my colleagues have done repeatedly. But I'll say this now, this feels momentous. Still, nothing's done until it's done." I think that's how the market's interpreting it as well. The market's starting to really feel a deal is happening. And that's why oil's down and the broader stock market is hitting all-time highs. S&P 757 right there as well. All right, cool. That is it. I'll be back on the market close. Let's do word of the day. Congrats to everybody. It is really, really, really nice to see everyone start to participate in the bull market. And I know a lot of these stocks are still down a lot year to date, but decent chunk of us have been buying the dip on really amazing companies down 40 to 50%. And even if you're not fully break even, it is really nice to see these names start to participate. These are names that are not, Microsoft's an important company. So it's really nice to see everyone start to participate a bit more in the broadening of this bull market. All right, here we go. 2 days in a row. Let's see if we can do it, baby. 2 days in a row, you're cheating on the prompt. I am not cheating on the prompt. I don't know what you guys need me to do to prove it. You guys want to go through my entire ChatGPT, which I wouldn't recommend. You're going to find a lot of crazy stuff in there, but it's literally give me another one. That's it. Give me another one. Okay. Persiflage. Light, playful, often mocking conversation or banter. I'm not going to look at the chat if you guys have a different pronunciation, because then you'll say that I'm cheating. Persiflage. I'm going for that. Persiflage. That's what I'm going for. Persiflage. Flage. There's no way that's wrong. The interview mixed serious analysis with enough persiflage to keep it entertaining. How else would you say that? Persiflage. No, there's no other way to freaking... We'll be okay on this one. I think we'll be okay. Here we go. Give me 2 days in a row.
Persiflage.
That's stupid, bro. That's that's like flage, really? Is this French? Flage?
Persiflage.
It's close enough. Persiflage. Who thought it was persiflage? Let me go through the chat. Oh shit, all of you were saying. There's like 15 comments saying flage. See, this is why I should have a phone a friend. You can't be mad at me for sounding it out. Persiflage. It's like, how was I supposed to know it's French or wherever it comes from? All right, we'll start the new streak on Monday. Camouflage. That's a good, but how was I supposed to think about that in real time and be like, oh, it probably rhymes with camouflage? Like that wasn't, that would have been so smart though if I did. That would have been so smart. Robinhood, hold on before I leave. Can we get 91? Can we get 5 more cents? They're going to tease us here. They might tease us. They might let it top out in the short term at 90.97, but she's going, baby. She's going. Yeah, they're going to play with us, bro. They're going to tease us here. They know 91 is going to be a little too much, but I think if the momentum continues, hopefully we're able to get it. All right, cool. That's it for me. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully everyone had a great week. I'll be back for the market close. If I don't see you on the market close, I should be good for Sunday futures, and then we enter June. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'll see you guys on the market close. Bye, everybody.